Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. The starting contract is to reborn the Empress. I will return 10,000 times. Chapter 1. Dongzhou Baji Domain. Outside the gate of Kengyuan Zhanzong Mountain, one of the several holy places for cultivating immortals in the area. Zhang Chuan was dressed in white and walking in the rain holding an oil paper umbrella. Such an artistic conception makes his whole person look more ethereal and elegant. Coupled with his handsome facial features, he is like an immortal descending from the sky. At this time, two big men suddenly appeared at the foot of the mountain. On their shoulders, they were holding a young man in gray with a bruised nose and swollen face, and was wailing repeatedly. The two people quickly came to Zhang Chuan, then pushed the young man in gray to the ground and said respectfully, "Sir, this is the person who is secretly spreading rumors about you." The young man in gray clothes kept struggling on the ground and said with an angry look on his face, "Let me go." "Zhang Chuan, don't you just have a good father?" Hearing this, Zhang Chuan knelt down and narrowed his eyes. "What did you just say about me? If you have the guts, say it again." The young man in gray gritted his teeth and said, "Just say it. Zhang Chuan, don't you just have a good father?" As soon as these words were spoken, the surrounding temperature seemed to drop to freezing point. The two big men couldn't help but tremble with such strong bodies. Zhang Chuan looked directly into the other party's angry eyes, suddenly smiled and said, "Very good. Very energetic. I just like when people say this about me." Zhang Chuan's sudden change of expression made the young man in gray and the two big men freeze on the spot. What the hell? How did he have the nerve to say this? The young man in gray clothes was stunned for a long time. When he came to his senses, he found that he was lifted into the air again by the big man behind him. "I see you are tired." Zhang Chuan stood up at some point, gently patted the swollen right cheek of the young man in gray twice, and sneered, "Don't walk on the mountain road for a while, I will see you off." When the young man in gray heard this, his beaten blue eyes opened wide. The other party is actually so magnanimous. Could it be that I used the heart of a villain to judge the heart of a gentleman? Just when the young man in gray was still secretly repenting in his heart, Zhang Chuan continued, "Just throw him down." "Ah!" The young man in gray clothes screamed, and then he jumped into the air. Then I heard a chirp sound and landed perfectly. Zhang Chuan nodded with satisfaction, turned around and left slowly. The young man in gray wouldn't die from this fall, but the opponent would have to lie in bed for at least 10 months. After stepping into the mountain gate of his house, the light rain falling from the sky disappeared immediately, as if there was an invisible shield inside the sect to block the rain. Zhang Chuan took the oil paper umbrella back to his universe ring, and the original playful look on his face no longer existed. At this time, his face was dull, and he had an enigmatic and masterful demeanor. But putting aside his expression, Zhang Chuan's heart is actually confused. "What's going on?" Zhang Chuan murmured in a low voice. "I just squinted for a while watching a drama, but it transmigrated." The reason why the two big men didn't call themselves brothers before was because they were still members of the Zhang family. At the same time, his father was not only the high-ranking elder of the Kengyuan sword sect, but also the head of the Zhang family, a wealthy family with a high reputation throughout Dongzhou. And Zhang Chuan's identity at this time is the senior elder brother of the Kengyuan sword sect, which can be said to be a star-studded existence. With this start, could I be about to take off? So as a transmigrator, will I have a system like those Shuangwen in my previous life? With a thought in his mind, Zhang Chuan opened his lips slightly. System. After a long moment of silence, a cold mechanical sound resounded in Zhang Chuan's mind. "Ding! I am the host. The 10,000 times contract return system is here to serve you wholeheartedly." Hearing this, Zhang Chuan's eyes suddenly lit up. I didn't expect that there really was a system in his mind. As the system's voice fell, a curtain of light slowly emerged in Zhang Chuan's mind. Host Properties panel has been generated. Host, Zhang Chuan. Identity, young master of the Zhang family, senior brother of the Kengyuan sword sect. Bloodline constitution. 3,000 Dao bones transplantation, sword spirit body acquired. Divine ability. Sword origin code, Kengyuan sword technique, broken river finger. Cultivation. Dragon transformation realm 3rd layer heaven. Looking at the property panel generated by the system, Zhang Chuan was quite satisfied for a while. But when he saw the label of 3,000 bone transplants in the line of blood and constitution, his eyes froze. Transplant. Zhang Chuan's expression became strange for a moment. Then he immediately searched the memories of his predecessor from birth to the present. In the end, it was discovered that the 3,000 bones in his body were actually transplanted from someone else. The other party seemed to be the princess of a small dynasty within the Zhang family's sphere of influence. Back then, the other party and Zhang Chuan were born on almost the same day, and the vision from the sky caused by 3,000 Taoist bones was too huge. This news was immediately learned by the Zhang family. Under the pressure of the Zhang family, the small dynasty had no choice but to hand over the 3,000 Dao bones. After having 3,000 Dao bones, Zhang Chuan's original sword body was upgraded to a sword spirit body. Possessing two physiques at the same time also made him become the most evil genius among the younger generation in Dongzhou. However, after the incident, the Zhang family did not kill the dynasty, but gave them generous compensation. Thinking of this, Zhang Chuan felt more and more something was wrong. Originally, he thought that his family background was prominent, his father was awesome, and he was an evil genius, so everything was going smoothly. Now that I have discovered this, it seems that my setting seems to be a villain who steals human nature. According to the plot of the novel, a handsome and powerful villain like him is definitely a stepping stone on the protagonist's rise. When he is defeated, it will be his father, his ancestor, his ancestor. Continuous free shipping delivered to your door. Zhang Chuan was thinking in his heart, but his eyes shone with a gleam of light, but I am not one of those villains who have been reduced to intelligence. Now that there is a system, he can fight as many protagonists as he comes. System, what functions do you have? Return to the host. This system allows you to contract with any target whose cultivation level is lower than yours. After binding, the improvement obtained by the contracted object will be returned to you in a multiple of 10,000 times. Warm reminder. The host can only select one contract object. Once selected, it cannot be changed. Hearing this, Zhang Chuan's eyes widened in horror, and his mouth opened wide. 10,000 times return. Doesn't that mean that if the contract partner is promoted, he will be promoted 10,000 times more than the other party? I am invincible at the beginning. Zhang Chuan took a deep breath and tried to calm down his excitement. At the same time, he looked at the two big men catching up behind him. Information about the two people suddenly appeared in his mind. Name: Wang Ershang. Identity: disciple of Kengyuan sword sect. Qualifications: moderately successful genius. Name: Wang Dashang. Identity: disciple of Kengyuan sword sect. Qualification: a little better than Ershang. I can actually see the target's information. Zhang Chuan exclaimed inwardly. With such thoughtful system functions, it will be much easier for him to find the contract target. It's a pity that the qualifications of the two big men did not meet the requirements of the contract in Zhang Chuan's heart. He thought very clearly that the qualifications of the contract target would determine whether he could rely on the system to remain flat and invincible in the future. If the object of the contract is stuck in a realm and has no progress, then his system's 10,000 times return will be useless. Sir, what's wrong with you? Wang Ershang hesitated for a while, and then asked. Their young master had been staring at them for a long time with bright eyes, but he didn't even dare to breathe. Zhang Chuan waved his hand and said calmly, Nothing, you two come with me to Zongmen Square. He returned to the sect today because of his father's instructions to select a good candidate for the great elder's lineage among the new disciples recruited by the sect. The predecessor of this body just turned a deaf ear to this. He just found an inner elder of the great elder's lineage and asked him to choose on his behalf. But now, with his system in place, he might be able to find good candidates among the newly recruited disciples. As Zhang Chuan walked on the way to Zongmen Square, greetings came from time to time in his ears. See senior brother Zhang. Senior nephew Zhang is worthy of being the leader of the younger generation of our sect. This aura really makes me feel ashamed. The great elder has a successor. Senior brother Zhang seems to be handsome again. What should I do? The deer in his belly is about to pop out. Okay, you little girl is so shameless. Oh, senior sister, you're still talking about me. You're blushing too. Then what's going on with the belly band in your hand? What do you know? I'm looking for senior brother Yang's autograph. Listening to the praises from the disciples and elders around him, Zhang Chuan didn't feel anything at all for a moment, as if he was influenced by his predecessor's habits. Zhang Chuan just smiled back at everyone and walked towards the center of the square. At this time, there were several old men in blue robes standing on the high platform in the center of Zongmin Square, speaking loudly. The people below were filled with boys and girls with slightly immature faces, including many young ladies from the Dongzhou family and the imperial dynasty. They all stood there with solemn expressions, their eyes showing excitement from time to time. Zhang Chuan glanced briefly, then stepped forward, his body flashing, and he arrived on the high platform in an instant. The inner sect elders on the high platform felt the fluctuations of spiritual energy, and turned their heads to look in the direction of Zhang Chuan with angry expressions. They wanted to see who dared to be so rude, dare to interrupt the recruitment of new disciples in the sect in front of several inner sect elders. But when several people saw the appearance of the person clearly, their expressions suddenly changed. Putting aside the strength of this nephew Zhang, his terrifying background alone is not something that the elders of the inner sect can shout about. Zhang Ling, the leader of the inner sect elder, was stunned for a long time, then he laughed and said, "It turns out to be senior nephew Zhang. I wonder why senior nephew Zhang is here." Zhang Chuan crossed his arms and said with a faint smile, "I choose disciples at Qinglong Peak, so naturally I have to come and check them." Zhang Ling raised his eyebrows when he heard this. "Junior nephew Zhang asked me to choose his disciples on his behalf yesterday, so why did he come in person today instead? Is it true that noble people often forget things?" Although he thought so in his heart, Zhang Ling didn't say anything. And with Zhang Chuan at the scene, there will definitely be more people choosing to join Qinglong Peak. Seeing Zhang Chuan's appearance, all the new disciples below looked flushed and excited. "It's actually Mr. Sword. I didn't expect that I would be able to meet Master Jian, one of the 4 great masters of Dongzhou, just after I joined the sect. Oh my god, he's so handsome. Mr. Sword perfected being is 100 times more beautiful than the portrait on the sect's honor list." Facing the words of praise from the new disciples below, Zhang Chuan had no intention of listening at this time. He ignored the disciples in the back row and fixed his gaze on the 3 men and 2 women in the front row. Soon the system presented the information of the 5 people one by one in Zhang Chuan's mind. Name: Xu Wenxuan. Identity: the legitimate son of the Xu family in Yanyicheng. Qualification: superior genius. Name: Dao Fen. Name: Xu Pian. Qualification: superior genius. Zhang Chuan quickly scanned the information of the 3 male disciples, all of whom had excellent qualifications. But just having superior qualifications is not enough for him. Then the 4th message made Zhang Chuan pay more attention for a moment. Name: Ning Xin. Identity: the 3rd lady of the Ning family in Dongzhou. Qualification: top genius, possessing a water spirit body, recommended to bind a contract. Zhang Chuan slowly raised his eyes to look at Ning Xin. It was a petite and lovely girl in green clothes with skin as white as snow. Seeing Zhang Chuan's eyes looking at him at this time, he couldn't help but blush. He was obviously a minor who had just started to fall in love. Zhang Chuan looked away for a while and did not make a choice immediately. The water spirit body is indeed good, but compared to his sword spirit body, it is immediately stretched. He turned to look at the last girl. The girl's appearance is not outstanding. Apart from her nearly golden proportions and graceful figure, she can even be said to be ordinary. But for such a woman, Zhang Chuan felt a strong sense of closeness to her, as if there was an unbreakable bond between the two. From the time Zhang Chuan appeared until now, the other party has always looked into the distance with a calm expression, as if nothing could cause her mood swings. Zhang Chuan stared at the girl for a long time, and suddenly a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. There is no other reason. The other party's information panel detected by the system is simply shocking. Name: Luo Yue. Identity: Princess of Daifeng Dynasty. Qualifications: Emperor Grade Demon, 3000 Dao Bones lost, Dao Yuan immortal body, acquired peerless beauty, a physique that can appear when a woman's appearance is at its peak. The system strongly recommends tying her up. A flash of light flashed in Zhang Chuan's eyes. It seems that I have met an acquaintance. The other party's lost 3000 bones are still on his body. But The peerless elegance mentioned by the system does not seem to match the appearance of the other party at this time. Got a makeover. Even he was deceived. What a good trick. System, contract. If he waits until he makes a contract with the other party and relies on the opportunity of the girl of luck, he might be able to ascend in the daytime while lying on the bed. This is simply a mobile ATM. But after a while, the system rarely responded at all. Hello, system, what's wrong with you? Zhang Chuan wondered in his heart. Sorry host, if you want a contract target, the system can only generate a contract after the host has physical contact with the target. Hearing this, Zhang Chuan suddenly became speechless. He did not expect that this broken system could not be bound directly. It seemed that he would have to do it himself for a while. Zhang Ling on the side saw Zhang Chuan staring at Luo Yue for a long time and said, "This girl's name is Yang Yue. She doesn't have any identity background, but her qualifications are good and she has barely reached the upper level." Zhang Ling didn't feel that Zhang Chuan had any lust. There were many women in the sect who had better looks than that one. It is no exaggeration to say that with just a wave of his hand, senior nephew Zhang next to him would have many female disciples come over to embrace him. After listening to Zhang Ling's introduction, Zhang Chuan couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Good qualifications. Barely above average. If you were told that she had emperor-grade qualifications, wouldn't you be shocked on the spot? What Zhang Ling said was completely different from the information given by the system. In Zhang Chuan's view, this Luo Yue not only changed her appearance, but even used a false identity to enter the Kengyuan sword sect. Zhang Chuan looked down at Luo Yue from a high position, the interest in his eyes becoming more intense. At this time, Luo Yue's heart was not as calm as on the surface. When Zhang Chuan's figure appeared on the high platform, she noticed it. At the same time, she tried not to look at the other party as much as possible. She was afraid that if she couldn't control herself, her murderous intention towards Zhang Chuan would be revealed. Not only because Zhang Chuan took away what originally belonged to her, but also because of what Zhang Chuan did to her in her previous life. That's right, Luo Yue is reborn in this life. Reminiscing about her previous life, she was ignorant and ignorant. After the Taoist bones were dug out and the more powerful Taoyuan immortal body was awakened, she was extremely excited. This also made Luo Yue in her previous life hate Zhang Chuan much less. In the near future, under Zhang Chuan's pursuit, she became his Taoist companion. But this is the beginning of her nightmare. She never dreamed that the man who was always caring for her would be by her side. When she breaks through the quasi-emperor and her breath is disordered, he will suddenly kill her in a sneak attack. It was only at the moment of her death that she realized that Zhang Chuan approached her solely because of the Taoyuan immortal body in her that originated from the same source as the 3,000 Tao bones. Luo Yue couldn't help clenching her fists every time she thought of the death scene in her previous life. At this moment, seeing her life and death enemy again, in addition to anger, she felt more shocked. After her rebirth, she remembered the memories of her previous life by heart. Luo Yue clearly remembered that Zhang Chuan did not attend the Kengyuan sword sect worship ceremony today. He just found an inner sect elder to select new disciples on his behalf. In her previous life, she and Zhang Chuan had been together for thousands of years, and Luo Yue knew the other person's habits almost like the back of her hand. An indifferent person like Zhang Chuan would never be interested in recruiting new disciples. But why, in this life, the other party suddenly appeared? Could it be that after his rebirth, the world also changed? Just when Luo Yue was still thinking about what went wrong in all this, there was an exclamation of surprise from all around. Luo Yue raised her eyes curiously, and in just a moment, the figure that seemed like a nightmare to her suddenly appeared in front of her. She subconsciously took half a step back, secretly clenching her hands in her sleeves. Seeing this, Zhang Chuan took another step forward, staring at the other party with a warm smile on his lips. "Junior sister, are you afraid of me?" Hearing Zhang Chuan's inquiry, Luo Yue's heart suddenly tightened. Did he discover something? As soon as this idea emerged, Luo Yue immediately rejected it. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Almost no one in Dongzhou can see through the art of disguise that he created in the Saint King realm in his previous life. After thinking about it, Luo Yue calmed down her chaotic thoughts, tried her best to squeeze out a smile and said, "Senior brother, don't blame me. It's just my first time to see such a talented person like my senior brother at such a close distance, so I was a little nervous for a while." Hearing this, the smile on Zhang Chuan's face grew thicker. "That's good. Junior sister, I see that you have good qualifications, so please join me at Qinglong Peak." While speaking, Zhang Chuan suddenly reached out and pinched Luo Yue's slender wrist. He pulled Luo Yue, who was still stunned, behind him. At the same time, a cold mechanical sound came from Zhang Chuan's mind. "Ding! Congratulations to the host. The contract has taken effect and the binding is successful." The contract partner Luo Yue took a breath of spiritual energy, and her realm increased by 0.000000000001%. 10,000 times return trigger. The host gets a middle-grade spirit stone. Zhangchuan, system, there is no need to report this inconsequential improvement in the future. Zhang Chuan thought to himself. Every time Luo Yue takes a breath, the system will report it. Before he could be trampled to death by the protagonist, he would be noisy to death by the system first. The other side. Wah, what? After Luo Yue reacted, she couldn't help but be surprised. Originally, she came to Kengyuan sword sect because she wanted to be a disciple of her master in her previous life, so she simulated her qualifications to be superior. As a result, Zhangchuan, a variable, did not play his cards according to common sense at all. For a moment, she was in a dilemma. Seeing Luo Yue standing there hesitating, Zhang Chuan's eyes narrowed and he said coldly, "What, junior sister doesn't want to join my Qinglong Peak?" Since he has bound a contract with Luo Yue, the best way is to ensure that the other party is within his control. Luo Yue gritted her teeth secretly when she heard this, then pretended to be ecstatic and said, No, senior brother, I'm too excited. I can't believe this is true." Thinking about it carefully, although she did not become a disciple of the master in her previous life, it was not a bad thing for her to practice in Qinglong Peak. Luo Yue remembered that during this time in her previous life, a secret realm would be discovered. At that time, Zhang Chuan, the senior brother of Qinglong Peak, led the team. When fighting for the secret realm, several people from Qinglong Peak were the first to enter the secret realm and obtained many treasures from it. In this life, if she joins Qinglong Peak, she might be able to design a plan to make Zhang Chuan return empty-handed. Hearing this, Zhang Chuan smiled. "That's good. After the ancestral worship ceremony is over, you can go back to Qinglong Peak with Elder Zhang Ling." Luo Yue nodded silently, the light in her eyes getting deeper and deeper. When the surrounding disciples saw this scene, they couldn't help but started talking. This Yang Yue is so virtuous and capable that she actually asked Mr. Jian to personally recruit her into the peak. Originally, I thought Ning Xin would be the first to enter Qinglong Peak. Isn't that right? Miss Ning's appearance can surpass that of Yang Yue. As expected of Mr. Jian, he can still be approachable even when facing new disciples like us. Ning Xin also glanced at Luo Yue behind Zhang Chuan from time to time, her mouth pouting with an unconvinced look on her face. In addition to body shape, he can crush the opponent in terms of appearance, strength, family background and qualifications. Why was he not the first person to be held by Mr. Sword's hand? The inner sect elders on the high platform also looked over with curiosity. Yang Yue had gone through the previous entrance test, and they knew very well that the other party's qualifications were barely above the level. There are at least dozens of people with this kind of qualification in Qinglong Peak. As a result, Zhang Chuan personally recruited someone with such qualifications. Could it be that there was something special about the other party and they didn't notice it? Zhang Chuan didn't care what other people thought. The so-called 80/20ths rule. Now that he has successfully contracted Luo Yue, the next thing seems to be irrelevant to him. Then Zhang Chuan slightly casually recruited Ning Xin into Qinglong Peak and left without looking back. He doesn't have that much time to waste on such boring activities. It's better to think about what to give Luo Yue as a meeting gift later. After all, the other party is the most important part in determining whether you can live peacefully in the future. By the time Zhangchuan returned to Qinglong Peak, it was already the branches above the moon. Qinglong Peak is said to have been named after the founder of the Kengyuan sword sect suppressed a saint-level dragon clan here thousands of years ago. At this time, Zhang Chuan did not choose to return to his residence immediately. Instead, he ordered the two bears and the big bear to leave, and then flew to the top of Qinglong Peak alone with his sword. The great elder of Kengyuan sword sect, Zhang Chuan's chief dad, lives here. As for the chores in the Zhang clan, his second uncle had always been left to take care of them. His father's name is Zhang Shiren, and he can be said to be the person closest to him in this world. Generally speaking, the closer you are to someone, the easier it is to find flaws in Zhang Chuan's daily habits. Zhang Chuan should have kept a certain distance from this kind of people, but since he transmigrated, his predecessor's original habits have still been retained. In addition, he had already memorized the memories of his predecessor by heart. Contacting such people as early as possible now will be more conducive to their integration into the world. Zhang Chuan couldn't help but sigh in his heart when he looked at the cave mansion, which was as dazzling as a pearl in the vast night. My chief dad has enough luxury. He was not in a hurry to stage a father-son relationship with the other party, but stopped where he was and moved his lips slightly. System, check Luo Yue's attribute panel. Ding, the property panel has been generated. Contract object, Luo Yue. Identity, Princess of Daifeng Dynasty. Bloodline physique, 3000 Dao bones excavated, Dao Yuan immortal body acquired peerless elegance. Exercise divine ability. Dao Yan Sutra, great hand to cover the sky, cutting the river with one finger. Cultivation, peak of Dao Palace realm. Zhang Chuan originally wanted to see how far Luo Yue's realm had reached, so that he could ask his father for some pills that could improve her. But you won't know until you look at it, and you will be shocked when you look at it. Dao Yan Jing, isn't that the Emperor's Sutra created by the legendary Great Emperor who possesses a Taoyuan immortal body? Are the chances of a girl of luck really so exaggerated? At the same time, he also saw the secret skill that belongs to his Zhang family, the Duanzhang finger. Where did she get the divine ability from my Zhang family? Zhang Chuan was confused, then shook his head. I think it's because of the bone digging, so I'll take Duanzhang's finger as compensation. Zhang Chuan felt that this was the only possibility. Unless the Zhang family took the initiative to give it away, it would be impossible for their Zhang family's secret knowledge to wander outside and be obtained by a Taoist monk. After thinking for a moment, Zhang Chuan walked to the door of cave mansion. He reached out and knocked quickly on the door 3 times. Boom! There was a roar inside the door, and then the door in front of Zhang Chuan slowly opened with a gap wide enough for one person. Entering the cave mansion, Zhang Chuan's eyes were in a trance, and the interior scenery suddenly became clear. I saw a huge house standing like a palace, with the golden glazed tiles on the roof still shining brightly in the night. Zhang Chuan didn't stop and quickly walked into the back room with a calm expression. Inside the house, a middle-aged man wearing a black and gold robe sat at the jade round table, quietly sipping tea. There is a domineering aura flowing through his every move, showing no anger and self-power. This person is Zhang Chuan's father, Zhang Shiren. Zhang Chuan chuckled and slowly came to sit opposite Zhang Shiren. Hey, Dad, where are you drinking tea? As he spoke, a thought came to his mind, and he took the teapot on the table and filled the teacup in front of him. When Zhang Shiren heard this, he just raised his eyes and glanced at Zhang Chuan without any expression. This is not because Zhang Shiren is too cold towards Zhang Chuan. But every time the other party comes to look for him, it's bound to be up to no good. The last time was to pursue the saint of Yaoshan Holy Land, and asked him for a rare flower from the western regions that was 500 years old and could last forever. Fortunately, the saint didn't accept it, so Zhang Chuan returned it. Last time, he asked him for 300,000 high-grade spiritual stones, and took the spiritual stones to the Wang family's stone gambling shop to cut the origin stone. In the end, he lost everything and lost all his money. This time, even if Zhang Shiren jumped from Qinglong Peak and died outside, he wouldn't give this stupid son a penny. Zhang Chuan took a sip of tea and suddenly raised his eyebrows. This tea, the brew turned out to be enlightenment tea. Okay. My father is actually hiding something private. My predecessor had never tasted this enlightenment tea several times before. Zhang Chuan will naturally not let go of such a good thing. The other party is his father, why should he be polite? So, with Zhang Xiren's stunned expression, Zhang Chuan drank 5 glasses of wine in succession. Just when he was about to continue drinking the 6th cup, Zhang Xiren finally couldn't help but slap the table and stood up, gritting his teeth and said, "You brat, if you have something to say, just say it. If you have any questions, let it go quickly. Don't waste my enlightenment tea." After that, he snatched the teacup from Zhang Chuan's hand and quickly put it into his universe ring. Hearing this, Zhang Chuan shrugged and said calmly, "Dad, this is wrong. I came here to visit you. Isn't it right for me to drink a few sips of your tea?" As soon as these words came out, Zhang Xiren was so angry that his beard almost blew into his nostrils. Doesn't this brat know how difficult it is to buy enlightenment tea? 1 or 2 enlightenment tea leaves cost him millions of high-grade spiritual stones. Then Zhang Chuan changed the topic and said seriously, "Dad, I do have something to ask you when I come here this time." Hearing this, Zhang Xiren's heart tightened, wondering what trick Zhang Chuan was trying to pull out. "Dad, I know you still have a lot of Siji pills here. Just give me a few." The 4-pole pill, as the name suggests, is a pill that can greatly increase the chance of Dao Palace monks breaking through the 4-pole realm. Based on the memory of his predecessor, Zhang Chuan knew that his father did have a lot of 4G pills. They are mainly used to reward talented new disciples in the peak. What do you want the 4 extremes pill for?" Zhang Xiren couldn't believe it for a moment. This sentence came from Zhang Chuan's mouth. Originally, he thought that Zhang Chuan would make some excessive requests, so he could just reject them. "If it's just the 4G pill, you can just go to the pill hall to get it." Zhang Xiren was right. If Zhang Chuan went directly to the elder of the elixir hall, the other party would definitely give the 4G pill to Zhang Chuan for free for Zhang Xiren's sake. Zhang Chuan looked at the sky outside the house, then stretched out a hand and said, "Of course I know this, but Daddy, what you have in your hands are all top quality. I don't like the uneven elixirs in the elixir hall." Seeing that Zhang Chuan never told the reason, Zhang Xiren didn't ask any more questions. Then he took out a small porcelain bottle and handed it to Zhang Chuan, waved his hand and said, "Okay, if you have nothing to do, leave quickly. I'll get angry when I see you." At this time, Zhang Chuan raised the corners of his mouth, took the small porcelain bottle, bumped it in his hand, and said with a smile, "Don't worry, Dad, let me pour you a cup of tea." Zhang Xiren was stunned when he heard this, and then smiled. "Drink. Grow up. Drink. You should." After saying that, Zhang Chuan snatched the teacup in front of Zhang Xiren with lightning speed. Then he raised his head and drank it all. He poured it all into his mouth. By the time Zhang Xiren came to his senses, Zhang Chuan had already dropped the teacup and disappeared in a flash. "Brat." Zhang Xiren stared at the empty teacup that fell to the ground, shook his head and cursed with a smile. This kid is getting more and more courageous, and he even dares to play tricks on his father. Time quickly came to the next day. Luo Yue got up early to wash up and prepare to go out. At this moment, her spirit seemed a little sluggish, as if she had experienced a big battle last night. Logically speaking, after becoming a monk, even if you don't need to sleep, you can replenish the energy lost in a day just by practicing. The reason why Luo Yue is like this is because when she was assigned a residence yesterday, the disciple responsible for guiding her assigned her residence directly below the cave mansion where Zhang Chuan lives. The residences in Qinglong Peak are arranged according to the disciples' cultivation level and status within the sect. All disciples' residences are built around Qinglong Peak and are divided into 3 floors. At the top are true disciples like Zhangchuan, who live in larger cave mansion. The middle level belongs to senior brothers and sisters who have been in the peak for many years, or disciples who are extremely talented and have been accepted by the elders. This is the case for Ning Xin, who joined Qinglong Peak this year. These people have an independent courtyard in front of their houses. And new disciples like Luo Yue are naturally assigned to the lowest residence. But the development of things always caught her off guard. After allocating Ning Xin's residence, it was Luo Yue's turn. The disciple responsible for guiding her told her that there was no more room at the bottom. Finally, with the consent of the elders, her residence was arranged on the middle floor. At the same time, by coincidence, Zhangchuan's cave mansion was right above her. Although every disciple's residence in Qinglong Peak is protected by a formation that shields them from prying eyes. But even so, Luo Yue still felt that she deserved to be panicked. This caused her to dream again that night of Zhang Chuan's indifferent and ruthless face in her previous life, which lingered in her mind like a haze. Luo Yue took a deep breath and looked above her head from the corner of her eyes. Then the flying sword under her feet rose, and her figure quickly rushed towards the Zongmin market. In her previous life, she heard that several disciples had found many treasures of heaven and earth in the sect's market. Now that I have been reborn, my spiritual power has doubled, and I think I can find some good spiritual materials there. Inside Zongmin Market, disciples from all peaks came here early in the morning to set up stalls, and the items in them were even more dazzling. However, there is no way to know whether it is true or false. Maybe one of the disciples picked up a stone on the way and put it on the stall to sell. Disciples were coming and going on the street, and from time to time a disciple would stop, walk to a stall, and pick up his favorite items. He and the disciple who set up the stall started haggling over the price enthusiastically. Some disciples who have just joined the sect and come to the market for the first time will stay far away, for fear that the other party's saliva will spray on them. After all, the disciples of Kengyuan sword sect are all swordsmen. Swordsmen should move forward bravely. What? The price won't be reduced. Then let's compare notes. At this time, Luo Yue was also walking on the market streets, her slim waist twisting left and right with her steps. This scene made many male disciples present bewildered. With such a graceful figure, even if her appearance is not good, it is still the same when the lights are turned off. But, at this time, no one dared to walk up to Luo Yue and talk to her in public. Almost all the disciples present had heard about what happened at the sect worship ceremony yesterday. A woman that the senior brother of their Kengyuan sword sect could personally recruit. Either he has something to do with that senior brother, or his identity is very special. Maybe their senior brothers will be good at this too. Luo Yue wandered around the market for a long time and only found a black gold iron grass used to enhance the physical strength of monks. This kind of high-level spiritual grass is already very rare for ordinary disciples, but it is far from what she expected. It wasn't until Luo Yue visited every stall in the market that she shook her head and gave up. After the whole search, except for the black golden iron grass, no high-level spiritual grass appeared. Is it because I came too early? Luo Yue was confused. Then she thought about it carefully and felt that this conjecture was reasonable. After all, when she first joined the sect in her previous life, there was no news about the precious medicine. It seems that she was too impatient, and now finding a black golden iron grass can be regarded as a harvest. Just when she was about to leave the market and return to Qinglong Peak to refine the black gold iron grass, suddenly there was an exclamation not far away. Senior brother Zhang, it's senior brother Zhang who is here. Luo Yue suddenly raised her eyes after hearing this. I saw Zhang Chuan holding a folding fan and leading the big bear and two bears, surrounded by a group of disciples like stars over the moon. At this moment, Zhang Chuan seemed to sense Luo Yue's gaze. He looked through the dense crowd and looked at Luo Yue. He smiled and nodded at the other party, then signaled the two bears to stay low grade, and walked into the tea house in the market alone. Zhang Chuan's amiable and approachable appearance made Luo Yue feel sick. Wait a minute, Zhang Chuan, sooner or later I will take off your hypocritical mask. The tea house that Zhang Chuan entered was specially set up by the sect as a place for disciples to rest and enjoy tea. At this time, as Zhang Chuan entered, there was another exclamation in the tea house. Seeing this, Luo Yue slowly turned her gaze to the two bears. These two people were Zhang Chuan's personal henchmen, and she had been suppressed by them when she first joined the sect in her previous life. In the end, Zhang Chuan came forward and asked the two to apologize to her, and the matter came to an end. Thinking about it now, Luo Yue felt that she was too ridiculous at that time. The whole process was led by Zhang Chuan like a fool. Just when Luo Yue was still immersed in the memories of her past life, Wang Dashang and the other two suddenly came to the stall next to her. I saw Wang Ershang pick up a spiritual energy gourd, wave it in front of the stall owner and ask, "Here, do you want to sell the 5 spiritual stones?" Hearing this, the stall owner's expression suddenly turned ugly. "This, Brother Shang, You also know that this spiritual energy gourd is very popular in our market. You really can't sell it for 5 spiritual stones. The spiritual energy gourd can be said to be an item that most monks in the immortal cultivation world carry with them. It's not that it's powerful, on the contrary, it has no lethality at all. However, the spiritual energy gourd can store spiritual energy in it, and it has been used by monks for emergencies in battle. According to the market price, a spiritual energy gourd is worth at least 50 low-grade spiritual stones. The stall owner knew that the 2 people in front of him were not easy to mess with, so he gritted his teeth and closed his eyes and said, "Brother Shang, how about 25 spiritual stones? This price really can't be lower." I said 5 spiritual stones, 5 spiritual stones, hurry up, don't let me say it for the last time." Wang Ershang slapped his palm on the stall, his eyes widened and he yelled angrily, "I'll give you 100 spiritual stones, and I want this spiritual energy gourd." When the 3 heard this, they turned around and looked in surprise. I saw Luo Yue coming to the stall at some point, looking at the spiritual energy gourd in Wang Ershang's hand, with a flash of light in her eyes from time to time. Just now, she suddenly discovered that there was a trace of the Sijidan breath leaking out of the spiritual energy gourd. She also dabbled in alchemy in her previous life, and after hundreds of years of practice, she could barely be considered a 5th-grade alchemist. But what makes Luo Yue strange is that there is a 4-pole pill hidden in the spiritual energy gourd. Why didn't she find it before? After thinking about it, she could only attribute it to her lack of concentration and carelessness. As for why there are 4-pole pills in the spiritual energy gourd, it seems that someone accidentally dropped it in the growth area of the spiritual energy gourd, and it happened to be wrapped in a mature spiritual energy gourd. After Wang Ershang saw the person clearly, his face suddenly showed a fierce expression. He smashed the spiritual energy gourd in his hand on the stall, pointed at Luo Yue's nose and said, "Don't think that Yang Yue, Wang Ershang, is afraid of you because you were a disciple personally recruited by the master." At this time, Luo Yue looked extremely calm, and the corners of her plump lips curved. There is a rule in the sect that all items in the market are subject to fair bidding by the disciples. Why, could it be that you have been a fool for so long that even the sect doesn't take it seriously? Hearing this, Wang Ershang was stunned and said incoherently, "Yang Yue, don't spit on others, when did I say that?" When Wang Dashang on the side saw this, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He patted Wang Ershang on the shoulder and motioned for him to step back. Then Wang Dashang stepped forward and sneered, "How about this? If you can take my punch, the 2 of us will buy it for 100 spiritual stones. At the same time, you can get this spiritual energy gourd without spending a penny." As soon as he said this, the disciples passing by could not help but widen their eyes. But then I thought about it, with Wang Dashang's cultivation level, the other party was a new disciple who had just joined the sect. Let alone a punch, a new disciple of the Wheel Sea realm might not even be able to take a finger from the Dao Palace realm. In the eyes of the surrounding disciples, it was impossible for Luo Yue to accept this bet. Luo Yue glanced at the 2 of them coldly, and their cultivation was clearly exposed in front of her. The cultivation levels of Wang Dashang and Wang Dashang are no more than the 3rd or 5th layer of Dao Palace realm. Even if there were 10 more monks at this level, Luo Yue could defeat them with 1 palm. To her at this time, the value of the 4-pole pill was definitely higher than that of the previous black gold iron grass. With the power of the 4 extremes pill, she can save at least dozens of days of training time and reach the 4 extremes realm. "Okay," Luo Yue said lightly, "just here, I'm in a hurry." As Luo Yue finished speaking, the entire audience was in an uproar. How dare this new female disciple of the sect dare to gamble with Wang Dashang, who is in the Dao Palace realm? This is not something you can win just by being confident. Wang Dashang sneered when he heard this, and said with an arrogant expression, "HMPH, ignorance will pay the price." As he spoke, he clenched his right hand tightly, and his aura erupted like an overwhelming force, punching Luo Yue. Seeing this scene, many disciples around him exclaimed, "It's Mountain Collapsing Fist." As expected of senior brother Wang, he has practiced Bengshan Quan to basic accomplishment. What a terrifying punch. Senior brother Wang's current state is probably as high as the 5th layer of Dao Palace. On the opposite side, Luo Yue's expression remained calm, without any change. Faced with Wang Dashang's powerful punch, she stood still and did not dodge. Until the wind of the fist roared in her ears and was about to hit her face in the next second. Soon after saying this, Luo Yue turned sideways, flipped her right hand over at the same time, and then placed a light palm on Wang Dashang's fist. Immediately afterwards, a scene happened that stunned the surrounding disciples. After Luo Yue's light palm struck, Wang Dashang suddenly became unstable and took 2 steps back. Seeing the situation, Luo Yue also pretended to be struggling and took 2 steps back. She had only used 20% of her strength before, but she didn't expect that the other party almost failed to catch it. Luo Yue felt that if she hadn't tried to hide her strength, she might have killed the opponent with her full blow just now. I read it right. Who is this new disciple? He actually caught Wang Dashang's palm. Why, please see clearly, we are clearly evenly matched. Rumors say, that is junior sister Yang Yue who joined the sect yesterday. Could it be that junior sister Yang is born with divine power? This is too outrageous. Luo Yue pretended to look ugly, grabbed the spiritual energy gourd on the stall and turned around to leave. She wasn't worried that Zhang Chuan would cause trouble for her afterwards. Not to mention that Zhang Chuan has to establish a good senior brother character in front of all the disciples, and he will never show up in person. Based on Luo Yue's understanding of Zhang Chuan, if the other party felt that his subordinates were useless, he would definitely kick them away without hesitation. Obviously, Dashang and his 2 men would never dare to tell Zhang Chuan that they had been humiliated by a new disciple. The scene of Luo Yue pretending to be injured and leaving was witnessed by everyone, and those disciples suddenly realized. It turns out that this woman was injured internally by Wang Dashang. Let's just say, how could a new disciple receive a punch from the Dao Palace realm without any injuries? As Luo Yue left, all the disciples lost sight of the excitement and scattered away, leaving only Wang Dashang and the other 3 who looked shocked. Wang Dashang looked down at the palm prints on his 4 fingers and couldn't help but swallowed. Fortunately, I listened to the young master and used 80% of my strength. If I kept hiding my clumsiness, I might not be able to withstand that palm. Wang Dashang was secretly surprised in his heart, and at the same time he admired his young master even more. Then he took out a universe bag and threw it at the stall owner next to him. Here, I'll reward you. The stall owner opened the universe bag and looked at it. His eyes suddenly lit up and he quickly smiled and said, "Thank you 2 senior brothers Wang. Next time something like this happens, remember to come to me again." Half an hour later, Zongmin Market, in a certain wing on the 2nd floor of the tea house. Zhang Chuan held his chin with one hand. After listening to Wang Dashang's story, he raised the corners of his mouth and looked at the 2 people beside him with a more appreciative look. "Sir, our acting skills are pretty good, right?" Wang Ershang stood aside and scratched his head and laughed. Zhang Chuan glanced at the other party indifferently, and tapped the table with his right fingers twice. Then 2 high-grade spiritual stones suddenly appeared out of thin air in their hands. "Well done, you should be rewarded." Even though Zhang Chuan only gave 2 high-grade spiritual stones, if converted into low-grade, it would be equivalent to 20,000 low-grade spiritual stones. Such a huge sum of money is enough to keep Wang Dashang and his wife happy for a while. Seeing the high-grade spirit stone in their hands, the 2 of them looked ecstatically and quickly and carefully put it away. Then he kept nodding and bowing to Zhang Chuan and said, "Thank you, sir. Although I don't know what their son's intention was in asking them to do this. But they are extremely happy to do this kind of easy and highly rewarding job no matter how many times they come." At the same time, the 2 also secretly decided in their hearts that they must take their acting skills to a higher level in the future, strive to reach new heights, and create greater glory. Zhang Chuan smiled lightly when he heard this, and waved his hands casually to the 2 of them, signaling them to leave. When he was the only one left in the wing, the smile on Zhang Chuan's face became more and more unscrupulous. The reason why Zhang Chuan found someone to act in this play was because he knew that if he took the initiative to give the Siji pill to Luo Yue, the other party would definitely refuse without hesitation. How about someone who dug out your bones when you were born, but now comes over with a smile and gives you benefits? Aren't you vigilant? Obviously, from Luo Yue's disguised identity and sneaking into the Kengyuan sword sect, it can be seen that the other party is definitely not a brainless person. Feeling happy, he picked up the teacup in front of him and drank the tea in one gulp. Slowly turned his head to look at the full sun hanging high in the sky. When the tide comes to an end, I will also see the first ray of light. Transformation Realm 10,000 times. After returning to her residence at Qinglong Peak, Luo Yue immediately activated the shielding array. Then he sat cross-legged on the bed and took out the spiritual energy gourd he had previously obtained from the two bears from the universe bag. Like Zhang Chuan, those who own a universe ring are very few in the sect. Like Luo Yue, most people carry one or two universe bags with them as backup. Luo Yue's right hands were pointed together, pointing toward the side of the spiritual energy gourd. Her fingers penetrated the spiritual energy gourd without any hindrance, instantly opening a gap on the side. The spiritual energy that had been stored in the spiritual energy gourd instantly overflowed and disappeared. With a thought in her mind, Luo Yue used her spiritual energy to absorb the four extremes pill out of thin air. Luo Yue's eyes lit up as she felt the rich medicinal fragrance of the Sijidan in her hand. I didn't expect it to be a top-quality four-pole pill. In this way, I might be able to break through the four-pole realm tonight. Don't look at the peak of Dao Palace realm to the first layer heaven of four extremes realm, it only improves a small realm. But in fact, every time a major realm is crossed, there will be a huge qualitative change, which is not comparable to simply improving a small realm. After being promoted to the four extremes realm, Luo Yue holds the Dao Yan Sutra and the Dao Yuan immortal body. He is even confident that he can defeat the monks from the fifth layer heaven in the first layer heaven. This strength will be enough to give Zhang Chuan a headache by then. Luo Yue was in a very good mood at this time. She no longer hesitated, swallowed the Sijidan, crossed her legs and started refining. The other side, Zhang Chuan, who was also in a happy mood, returned to Qinglong Peak not long after. On the way Yu Jian flew to Cave Mansion, the shielding circle raised from Luo Yue's residence was extremely conspicuous in Zhang Chuan's sight. He lowered his head and looked down, and couldn't help but chuckle. It looks like my little money tree has already started working. It's not in vain that I specially found someone to perform such a show in front of you. After the words fell, Zhang Chuan thought, and the flying sword under his feet accelerated a few minutes, and returned to the cave mansion in the next second. Before he could open the door and enter, a rushing voice sounded not far behind him. Master Nephew Zhang, stay. Hearing this, Zhang Chuan turned his head and looked doubtfully. He saw the figure of Zhang Ling, the elder of the inner sect, arriving in front of him at some point. The beard on his chin was slightly messy. Apparently it was caused by flying too fast on the way here. Zhang Chuan met the other party and said politely, "It turns out to be Elder Zhang. If you have anything to do, go in, sit down and talk slowly." After saying that, he turned around and opened the door, walked to the front, and led the other party into the cave mansion. Then the two sat down on opposite sides of a square table facing each other. Zhang Chuan waved his hand, and a tea set appeared between the two of them out of thin air. The cup has already been filled with hot tea. Zhang Chuan made an invitation gesture and said, "Elder Zhang, you might as well try it. Today's leaf tea is quite good." Hearing this, Zhang Ling couldn't help but look at Zhang Chuan with a hint of admiration. That day's leaf tea is not only good, but its value is not as good as that of enlightenment tea, but it is still hard to find for most people. The function of tianyi tea is to increase the spiritual energy absorption speed of the drinker, and the effect is much better than that of the spirit gathering pill. Zhang Ling, as the inner sect elder of Kangyuan sword sect, naturally has some. But he would only take it out when he wanted to make friends with the other person. He rarely took it out and drank it himself. Zhang Ling picked up the teacup and took a sip, nodded and said with a smile, "Good tea, this is a waste of money for junior brother Zhang." Zhang Chuan waved his hand. "It doesn't matter, Elder Zhang can drink as much as he wants." What he didn't say was that he still had several kilograms of the tianyi tea pointed to buy his universe ring. Zhang Chuan usually drinks it like tea. After finishing the drink, I wrote a list. There was no need to buy it myself. Zhang family servants would do the errands. Then he leaned back, crossed his legs and asked, "I wonder what the reason for Elder Zhang coming to see me is." Zhang Ling gently put down the teacup and said, Pansy Valley has been shaken in recent days, and the sect is going to send people to investigate. It just so happens that the sect worship ceremony has just ended, and those new disciples will also join. It should be an experience. The sect has already discussed with the Great Elder. How about you, Nephew Zhang, lead the team this time? But there is news that the Holy Son of the Wang family has also appeared near Pansy Valley. He is your old rival, Junior Nephew Zhang. Having said that, the two people here knew that this matter had little to do with the new disciples. At most, it was just to let them see the world. The focus is still on the powerful younger generations of other holy places and aristocratic families. This requires Zhang Chuan, a monstrous genius who is also a younger generation, to come forward. The Holy Son of the Wang family. Zhang Chuan narrowed his eyes slightly when he heard this. He seemed to have some impression of this person. I used to be in a Wang family's stone gambling shop, and was cheated of a large amount of spiritual stones by the other party. If Zhang Chuan remembered correctly, the realm of the Wang family's holy son was still higher than his own back then. He also possesses a spirit body of 10,000 thunders, which can trigger thunder attacks from the sky, and his strength can be called a monster. However, the previous matches between the two ended in a draw, with no winner or loser. Zhang Chuan's index finger tapped on the table rhythmically. After thinking about it secretly for a while, he nodded and agreed. If nothing happens, I'll take a walk. Zhang Chuan understood that this was a matter of concern to the sect's reputation, and even if he wanted to refuse, his father, as the Great Elder, would force him to go. After all, if the younger generation of his sect is suppressed, the faces of the senior sect members will be disgraced. In addition, Zhang Chuan has just transmigrated here and does not yet have a clear understanding of the world. It is also a good thing for him to go out for a walk now. Seeing Zhang Chuan agree, Zhang Ling smiled so much that the wrinkles on his face squeezed together. That's very good. With Master Nephew Zhang leading the team this time, the sect will feel more at ease. After bidding farewell to Zhang Ling, Zhang Chuan returned to his master bedroom and lay down, looking at the ceiling, thinking a lot for a while. Now Luo Yue will also go with him. If an opportunity arises in Pansy Valley, I can find a way to let the other party win. In the end, I just need to reap the benefits. Thinking of this, Zhang Chuan seemed to have seen his future of lying down without any worries. But suddenly, a mechanical sound resounded in his mind, interrupting his thoughts at the moment. Ding! The contract partner Luo Yue successfully broke through to the first layer of the four-pool realm. 10,000 times return trigger. The host's cultivation level is raised to the peak of Dragon Transformation Realm. Ding! The contract partner Luo Yue takes Wujin Iron Grass and her strength increases by 1 elephant. 10,000 times return trigger. The power of the host increases the power of all things. Before Zhang Chuan could react, a violent spiritual energy instantly poured into the meridians of his body. As if receiving the baptism of enlightenment, Zhang Chuan's own cultivation level began to skyrocket. He didn't stop until he reached the 9th layer peak of Dragon Transformation Realm. The terrifying power keeps flowing through the body, seemingly endless. Zhang Chuan even felt that now, under a full blow, even a half-step powerful person would not be able to withstand it. Out of curiosity, Zhang Chuan took out a spiritual weapon-level sword from the fingers of the universe ring. Holding the sword blade with one hand, he exerted force suddenly. Crack! The spirit soldier-level sword was actually pinched in two by Zhang Chuan's hand, and the part he held in his hand was turned into pieces. Looking at his hands, Zhang Chuan couldn't help but feel panic in his heart. This power of all things is quite exaggerated. But now it seems that the 10,000 times return mentioned by the system is not based on the quantitative improvement of the realm, but on the basis of quality. For example, this time Luo Yue was promoted to the Dao Palace realm. With the 10,000-fold return, he would not receive a 10,000-fold increase in realm and directly ascend to immortality. Instead, after the quality improved by Luo Yue was expanded 10,000 times, it was returned to Zhang Chuan. After all, every time you break through a small realm, you will improve exponentially. Now with this 10,000 times return, it is reasonable for him to break through to the peak of Dragon Transformation Realm. Ding! The heartbeat value function of the contract object has been turned on. The system's voice sounded again. Zhang Chuan raised his eyebrows and asked, "System, what is the use of this heartbeat value?" Contract partner Luo Yue's heartbeat index, -100. Return to the host. After the heartbeat index of the contract object reaches 50, the Wanji store function can be opened. -100. System, the heartbeat index is -100. What is the mentality of the contract partner when facing me? Zhang Chuan asked curiously. Then the system just said 4 words coldly. Enemy of life and death. Zhang Chuan was stunned when he heard this, then frowned. Doesn't this mean that Luo Yue is actually thinking about killing herself all the time? It's early in the morning. Zhang Chuan was woken up by the early bird in his sleep. At the same time, the system's beep sounded suddenly, which immediately cheered him up. Ding! Contract partner Luo Yue gets a middle-grade Earth Soldier sword. 10,000 times return trigger. Middle-grade Heavenly Soldier, Yulong sword has been distributed. Looking at the green sword that suddenly appeared in front of him, Zhang Chuan raised his eyebrows and slowly picked up the dragon sword. The handle of the sword was cold in his hands. I saw a long dragon carved on the body of the sword, which was lifelike, as if it would swim out of the sword body and break through the sky in the next second. Most Heavenly Soldier level weapons are in the hands of powerful people. In addition, there are very few weapon refiners in Dongzhou, and all kinds of high-quality treasures are in short supply. Even if the master with the best forging skills in Dongzhou currently wants to create a Heavenly Soldier, it will take several years. If there is a piece of Heavenly Soldier wandering around, someone will definitely fight for it. Even a child from a wealthy family like Zhang Chuan only has 1 low-grade Heavenly Soldier. What did Luo Yue do so early in the morning, and get a middle-grade soldier? Zhang Chuan put away the dragon sword, frowned and couldn't help but wonder. After thinking about it for a while, Zhang Chuan didn't come to a conclusion. Let's just think of it as an opportunity unique to girls of luck. You can't just pick it up anywhere when you go out, right? After washing up, Zhang Chuan dressed in white clothes and slowly walked out of Cave Mansion. Standing on the top of the mountain and looking down, the disciples' residences below were all visible to Zhang Chuan. At the same time, Luo Yue happened to be walking down the mountain, her beautiful eyes filled with joy. Today, she went down the mountain early before the sun rose. According to the timeline of the previous life, before a group of young disciples left for Panxi Valley today, Du Shuiyan, the chief elder of the sect's criminal law hall, suffered from a hidden injury and suddenly vomited blood and passed out beside a boulder 100 meters away from the criminal law hall. In the previous life, the other party was discovered by a passing elder after half an hour. In the end, he was able to wake up with the help of pills and Ning Shin's water spirit body. After she woke up, Du Shuiyan took even more care of Ning Shin and even gave her a middle-grade soldier on the spot. As the Empress in her previous life, Luo Yue wanted to suppress this hidden injury, and it could be said that it was effortless. Today she arrived half an hour early and didn't waste a single second. He was saved on the spot. He got the middle-grade soldiers sent by Du Shuiyan, and even had the chief elder of the criminal law hall as his backing. Luo Yue was naturally happy at this time. When she arrived at the door of her residence, she paused and subconsciously looked up. This raising of his head happened to collide with Zhang Chuan's gaze. Under the intertwining gaze, Zhang Chuan blinked and showed a warm smile. Luo Yue resisted the urge to gag, quickly avoided Zhang Chuan's gaze, used spiritual energy to warm her cheeks, and ran into the house pretending to be very shy. At the same time, a thought occurred to both of them. You really know how to pretend. 2 hours later. Kangyuan Sword Sect, inside the sect square. Each of the 9 peaks within the sect sent 2 inner disciples and 2 new young disciples. A total of 36 people were neatly arranged in 9 rows under the high platform. Except for Luo Yue, they all looked at the figure in white on the high platform with an expression of reverence. Everyone was happy that they had such a powerful senior brother to lead them in their training. Many people looked at Zhang Chuan with ardent eyes, full of flattery. However, there were a few disciples who knew what happened at the sect's market yesterday, and their eyes wandered between Wang Dashang and Luo Yue from time to time. He looked like he was going to watch a good show. After all, we were heading to a dangerous place like Panxi Valley. It was too easy for Wang Dashang, an inner disciple, to secretly embarrass Luo Yue. The three people sent from Qinglong Peak were Wang Dashang, Ning Xin and Luo Yue, as well as a disciple from the Taoist Palace's inner sect named Zhou Bin. At this time, Wang Dashang, as other disciples expected, squinted at Luo Yue with what he thought was the most ferocious look in his eyes. Disciples who didn't know it thought Luo Yue had stolen his rice. Luo Yue had a calm face and didn't care at all about Wang Dashang's hostility. She was always paying attention to Zhang Chuan's every move on the high platform with the corner of her eye. During this trip to Panxi Valley, she had the cultivation of the Four Extremes realm and the middle-grade soldiers given to her by Du Shuiyan earlier, which was enough to protect herself in the subsequent chaos in the secret realm. When the time comes, she might be able to disrupt the situation by playing it by ear. At this time, Zhou Bin, standing next to Luo Yue, smiled and said, "Junior sister Yang, how about the two of us go together when we get to Panxi Valley, so that we can have someone to take care of us then?" As he spoke, he stretched out one hand in front of Luo Yue, making a handshake gesture, and his eyes revealed a different kind of desire intentionally or unintentionally. Zhou Bin had investigated Luo Yue before and learned that apart from her suspected relationship with Zhang Chuan, she was just a new disciple with no background. Now that the other party has a conflict with Wang Dashang, it is obvious that there is no relationship between the other party and Zhang Chuan. As long as he gives Luo Yue some sweetness now, is he still afraid that she won't obediently throw herself into her arms? Zhou Bin has tried this trick almost every time in the sect, and many junior sisters have been harmed by him using this trick. As for Wang Dashang, because of Zhou Bin's identity, the other party still has to give him face. It's not a big grudge. At worst, I can just dig out some spiritual stones and give Wang Dashang some benefits. Luo Yue turned her head and glanced at the other person, looking at the palm that the other person stretched out in front of her, she couldn't help but frowning. She had heard of this person in her previous life. Zhou Bin, as an inner disciple of Qinglong Peak, his reputation in the sect is high and his strength is at the forefront. However, in the previous life, this person failed to harm a female disciple, and was finally sued by the other party and expelled from the sect. Luo Yue felt disgusted just by looking at such a scumbag. Seeing that Luo Yue didn't make any move, Zhou Bin's outstretched right hand froze in the air, and his face couldn't help but look awkward. This woman dared not even look down on him, Zhou Bin. He would definitely make her regret it. Thinking in his mind, Zhou Bin looked at Wang Dashang not far away, with a cold light flashing in his eyes. Then he stayed on Luo Yue's seductive figure for a moment, then turned and stood aside. Standing on the high platform, Zhang Chuan had a panoramic view of the scene below. Smiles flashed in his eyes from time to time. "It looks like another experience package has been delivered to my door." Luo Yue could suppress Zhou Bin with only one hand, but he was only at the Dao Palace level. Zhang Chuan didn't take it to heart at all. Zhang Chuan felt that as a child of luck, his growth path was too difficult. Either when fighting monsters and upgrading, or on the way to fighting monsters and upgrading, you will encounter life and death crises at every turn, and you have to defying the heavens and changing fate. It's miserable to think about it. Although his identity looks like a villain no matter how he looks at it. But ever since I was young, I have always had to get wind and rain, and cultivation resources are always at my fingertips. I don't know how happy I am. At this time, Zhang Chuan waved to Wang Ershang behind him. The other party understood instantly and took a step forward. Then he took out a trumpet-shaped object from somewhere and handed it to Zhang Chuan. Zhang Chuan held it in his hand and looked around with a complicated expression. What the hell is the difference between this and the small speaker used to sell food in the vegetable market in my previous life? Zhang Chuan turned his head and looked at Wang Ershang with a questioning look in his eyes. In the memory of his predecessor, he had never seen this thing before. "Sir, didn't you ask me to find a spiritual weapon that can amplify the sound? This is the spiritual energy loudspeaker newly developed by Zongmin's Weapon Refining Pavilion. It's very useful." Wang Ershang raised his eyebrows at Zhang Chuan with a proud look on his face. It turned out to be newly developed, no wonder I hadn't seen it before. Zhang Chuan glanced at the aura loudspeaker in his hand and tried to blow a few breaths, but there was no sound. Isn't this a semi-finished product? Zhang Chuan was confused. At the same time, he subconsciously reached out and patted it, but there was still no response from the aura loudspeaker. Everyone below, seeing Zhang Chuan tinkering with a small speaker on the high platform, they were all confused. At this time, Wang Ershang behind him silently poked his head out and explained in a low voice. Sir, this thing needs to be infused with spiritual energy before it can be used. Hearing this, Zhang Chuan cast a sidelong glance at the other person. Do I need your teaching, sir? I'm just observing its internal structure. After being scolded by Zhang Chuan, Wang Ershang smiled and quickly retracted his head. Then Zhang Chuan tried to inject spiritual energy into it and spoke into the spiritual energy loudspeaker. Junior brothers and sisters, I think everyone has heard of Pansy Valley's evil reputation. With your cultivation level, even if you don't go too deep, it will still be extremely dangerous. As your senior brother, I, Zhang Chuan, will go with you, but this time you are going for experience, not for sightseeing. You have to master the rules yourself. Zhang Chuan's words were infinitely amplified by the spiritual energy loudspeaker, and the deafening sound could be heard by almost all the disciples in the Zongmen Square. The newcomer disciple below became even more unnatural when he heard this. They originally thought that after getting the qualification to go out for training, they could just sit back and relax and pick up equipment. But from Zhang Chuan's words, they could clearly feel that this trip would definitely be extremely dangerous. But then Zhang Chuan changed the topic again. However, since the sect himself is the leader of this experience and is away from home, I will naturally take care of you. Here are 36 defensive spiritual weapons. Each of you has one piece. Please choose them in order of entry. As he spoke, Zhang Chuan waved his hand, and a violent light suddenly erupted within half a quarter of an hour. Immediately afterwards, a bunch of spiritual soldiers scattered in front of him out of thin air, including armor, shields, breast goggles, helmets, pendants, etc. These are all spiritual soldiers. Everyone below exclaimed in amazement, and the eyes of the new disciples looking at Zhang Chuan were even more intense. Half of the disciples present are still in the Wheel Sea realm. For their current state, a spiritual soldier is definitely rare. Even the children of small dynasties and small aristocratic families are equipped with at most one spiritual weapon, let alone others. Now Zhang Chuan turned his hand and took out 36 spiritual weapons, so rich and powerful. This move made everyone respect this senior brother even more. Since Zhang Chuan's voice was transmitted through the spiritual energy loudspeaker, the disciples in the entire Zongmen Square heard it clearly. Some disciples passing by the square looked at the high platform with envy. As expected of senior brother Zhang, he can actually come up with such a big deal. Senior brother Zhang is really worried about his junior brothers and sisters. I really want to go out to the sect to practice with senior brother Zhang. When Luo Yue heard this, she sneered in her heart. How could a person like Zhang Chuan be so kind? I just want to use money to clear the way, bribe other people, and show off my wealth. HMPH, it's nothing if you don't take it anyway. With a piece of spiritual weapon level armor, I can have more protection after going to Pansy Valley. But why doesn't this scene appear in the memory of the previous life? Facing everyone's gaze, Zhang Chuan looked calm and said unhurriedly. Once these spiritual soldiers are sent out, I will not take them back. You must pay close attention to nurturing them. All the disciples agreed in unison, and then stepped forward to take away the spiritual soldiers. Luo Yue randomly picked a pendant, lowered her eyes and said coquettishly. Thank you, senior brother Zhang. Seeing this, Zhang Chuan couldn't help but feel funny, and reached out to pat the other party's shoulder. It doesn't have to be like this. Junior sister, remember to concentrate on your cultivation and try to contribute to the sect. Luo Yue's body suddenly stiffened, and she almost lost control of the expression on her face. The moment Zhang Chuan touched her shoulder, she even had the urge to kill him with a sword. But Luo Yue knew that this was impossible. She didn't have the strength to stand up to Zhang Chuangong now. As Luo Yue sacrificed the pendant, the mechanical sound in Zhang Chuan's mind also sounded at the same time. Ding! Contract partner Luo Yue gets a middle-grade spirit weapon. 10,000 times return trigger. Middle-grade ground soldier defense pendant has been distributed. Hearing this, Zhang Chuan did not show much joy on his face. He also has a lot of ground soldiers, and adding one more will not bring much improvement to his strength. Zhang Chuan turned around, glanced at Luo Yue and others, and flew out of the Zongmen Square first. The spiritual soldiers are all ready, let's set off and target Panxi Valley. A small part of the reason why Zhang Chuan did this was to use his status to give Luo Yue spiritual soldiers. But the more reason is still to win people's hearts. As the saying goes, if you win the hearts of the people, you can win the world. The villains in those novels are used to being domineering, even if everyone around them respects them. But once the villain falls, there will be absolutely very few people who can really rely on him in the end. Maybe people who had offended him earlier would still attack him in groups. This phenomenon is quite common in novels. Regardless of whether Zhang Chuan is a villain in this world or not, he must prepare in advance. At the border of the Great Zhou Divine Sovereign Dynasty in the southernmost part of the Baji region, one of the 5 regions of Dongzhou, a huge canyon stretching for thousands of miles passes through. That was the destination of everyone from Kangyuan sword sect, Panxi Valley. Zhang Chuan pointed to the city not far away and slowly said, "This place is close to Panxi Valley, and monsters in the valley will appear from time to time. After entering the city, you are not allowed to leave the city at will. We'll go into the valley together tomorrow, do you understand?" "I'll understand later." All the disciples behind him nodded. Coming all the way from Kangyuan sword sect, they couldn't help but feel a little emotional. Although they are not at the top in the sect, but outside the sect, compared with people from other forces, they are the most dazzling. The most important reason is that Kangyuan sword sect is located in the center of the Baji domain. Compared with the other 4 regions, the resources of the Baji realm are not only much richer, but also rich in geniuses and monsters. As the only holy land in a region, almost all the forces in the Baji region are within the jurisdiction of the Kangyuan sword sect. This trip for disciples of the Kangyuan sword sect was like a private visit by the emperor of the dynasty incognito. The major forces that got the news banned their disciples from going out. He was afraid that a blind disciple would collide with Zhang Chuan and his group. At this time, a group of ministers from the Great Zhou Divine Sovereign Dynasty had already been waiting at the gate of the city. They bowed their hands respectfully toward Zhang Chuan and said, "I'll wait to see Mr. Zhang." Hearing this, the disciples didn't think there was anything wrong with the group of people not greeting them. Their senior brother Zhang is not only the most evil genius of the younger generation in Dongzhou, but his family background is also extremely prominent. It is completely reasonable to be treated like this by a small dynasty. Before Zhang Chuan could speak, a dynasty minister continued to preach. "Master Zhang, please come with me. Our Majesty has already prepared the manor for you young heroes to rest." Zhang Chuan nodded and smiled. As expected of King Zhou, he is very thoughtful. "Please say hello to him for me when you get back. After all, when you arrive at someone else's territory, you still need to say hello." Zhang Chuan remembered that King Zhou was from the Second Elder's faction. The Second Elder and his father were both powerful successors to the next headmaster, and they had always disliked each other. Overtly and covertly, the two may have fought countless times. This time he is responsible for leading the team, but it is necessary to be on guard against the King of Zhou. After a while, several ministers of the Great Zhou Divine Sovereign Dynasty led Zhang Chuan and others to a manor surrounded by mountains. The leading minister pointed to the building on the left side of the manor and said, "I have arranged the room here and you can check in at any time." "What are you talking about? Could it be that the manor on the right cannot be lived in?" A disciple of Kangyuan sword sect asked curiously. Upon hearing this, the minister exchanged glances with the people around him, and then said with an apologetic expression, "A few days ago, the holy son of the Wang family came to the city and asked to live here. Your Majesty had no choice but to agree under pressure. This, if Mr. Zhang is not satisfied, I will book a good guest room at the best restaurant in the city." Hearing this, Zhang Chuan's eyes swept over the ministers of the Great Zhou Divine Sovereign Dynasty in front of him one by one. Feeling Zhang Chuan's gaze, several people couldn't help but shudder. No one dared to look directly at them and lowered their heads. Zhang Chuan grinned and sneered. "No need, this manner is not bad." It turns out that the trap was set for him here. That Zhou Wang was really good at calculating, knowing that he and the Wang family's holy son had always been at odds with each other. He estimated that the other party had allowed everyone in the Wang family to live in the manor beforehand, and would shirk the responsibility after he arrived. With the character of his predecessor, he would definitely have a fierce battle with the holy son of the Wang family. At that time, some people will inevitably be injured, and the second elder who will ultimately benefit will be able to use the situation to his advantage. As Zhang Chuan finished speaking, a flash of joy flashed in the eyes of several ministers. In this way, their mission was completed. At this moment, they no longer wanted to stay here for a long time. After saying goodbye to Zhang Chuan, they left in a hurry. Every time they thought of Zhang Chuan's cold smile just now, they felt horrified. Luo Yue in the crowd couldn't help but nod secretly in her heart when she saw this scene. Finally came face to face with the memory of my previous life. If Zhang Chuan doesn't act according to common sense, she will even feel that the other person has been reborn like her. Luo Yue remembered that Zhang Chuan would directly challenge the Wang family's son for a fight, which would end in a draw. However, as the conflict continued to intensify, the other party still caused a lot of trouble to Zhang Chuan during the next day's trip to Panxi Valley. Luo Yue would be most happy to see Zhang Chuan suffer. You can each choose a room and move in, Zhang Chuan said calmly. After saying that, he walked into a house first and closed the door tightly. There were no candles lit in the room at this time, and it was dark, making it difficult for people to see clearly the furnishings in the room. Zhang Chuan stood there without moving, but there was a glint in his eyes. Mr. Wu, I have to trouble you with something. As Zhang Chuan finished speaking, a black shadow suddenly appeared silently behind Zhang Chuan. What are your orders, master? The black shadow slowly revealed its figure, and it turned out to be a tall, thin old man with wrinkles on his face. The old man exuded the aura of twilight from time to time, and a hoarse old voice came from his mouth. This person was Wu Hua, the protector specially arranged by Zhang Chuan's father to be beside him. On weekdays, Mr. Wu would not show up without Zhang Chuan's summons. Although Zhang Chuan had never seen each other a few times in his memory, Zhang Shiren told him that back then. This elder Wu's cultivation level has at least reached King Realm. Zhang Chuan stood with his hands behind his back and continued without turning around. Find a place to bury those people who just left, preferably in the back garden of the Great Zhou Divine Sovereign. Although those ministers are ordered by King Zhou, Zhang Chuan will not care about you so much. If I had to find a reason, it would be that he was very unhappy. Mr. Wu nodded. Old slave, I understand, but that King Zhou. On King Zhou's side, there will naturally be people who give him a headache. Zhang Chuan waved his hand and said with a faint smile. When Mr. Wu heard this, he turned around and disappeared into the darkness without asking any more questions. Less than a quarter of an hour after Mr. Wu left, there was a sudden knock on the door of Zhang Chuan's room. Zhang Chuan released his spiritual consciousness and checked it out, then said calmly. Come in. After the words fell, the door opened a crack, and Wang Dashang ran in with a respectful look. I saw him kneeling on one knee, bowing his head and cupping his hands and saying, Sir, I have something to report. My subordinates had been paying attention to Yang Yue's movements, but Zhou Bin suddenly came to me and said that he would work with me to suppress Luo Yue. My subordinate promised on the surface that after sending him away, I will come to see you immediately. Although Wang Dashang is strong and fat, he still has a bright mind. Based on what Zhang Chuan asked him to do in the past few days, it is not difficult to see that junior sister Yang will most likely become the future Mrs. Zhang family. Zhang Chuan looked thoughtful when he heard this. Zhou Bin obviously wanted to attack Luo Yue while training in Panxi Valley. If it is a junior sister with no background and low strength, she will really succeed. It's a pity that Luo Yue is not an ordinary person, and the other party also chose Wang Dashang, which is completely at the point of a gun. Then Zhang Chuan smiled faintly. In that case, you should communicate more with Zhou Bin in the past few days, and when he wants to take action, help him choose a good cemetery. Hearing this, Wang Dashang chuckled, his eyes serious. I obey my orders. Chapter 11. Early the next morning, Zhang Chuan asked Wang Dashang to notify all Kengyuan sword sect disciples in the manor to gather outside the manor. At the same time, the Wang family and his party also left the manor at this time. The leading man was majestic, wearing a dark purple robe, and lightning flashed around him from time to time. He's from the Wang family. Isn't the person walking in front the one of the 4 great masters of Dongzhou, Mr. Lei Wang Lei? Shish, keep your voice down. Don't you know that our senior brother Zhang and that Wang Lei are mortal enemies? Kang Yuan, Zhangzong and others stood around and whispered. A new disciple who joined the sect approached the inner disciple and said curiously, Senior brother, although I have often heard rumors about the 4 young masters in Dongzhou, how come these 4 young masters were selected? Why have I never heard of them? The inner disciple was easy to talk to. He smiled and said, this starts with our Tianji Pavilion in Dongzhou. Tianji Pavilion. That's right, this Tianji Pavilion has announced a list of Dongzhou's geniuses. Among them are the top 100 evil geniuses in our eastern continent, and the top 4 among them are known as the 4 young masters of the eastern continent. Then where does our senior brother Zhang rank on the list? Senior brother Zhang is ranked 3rd, but I believe that with senior brother Yang's talent, it is not impossible to be ranked 1 more. After all, senior brother Zhang is too young compared to the other 3. And because of the physical difference between Mr. Lei and senior brother Zhang, Mr. Lei is ranked below senior brother Zhang. As he spoke, the inner disciple's admiration for Zhang Chuan was clearly evident. When he saw Zhang Chuan and a group of Kangyuan sword sect disciples, Wang Lei paused and raised a hand to signal the Wang family disciples behind him not to come forward. People from the Wang family were also seen on the other side of Zhangchuan. When the 2 groups of people met, the atmosphere at the scene instantly became tense. Wang Lei stared at Zhang Chuan for a long time, then narrowed his eyes slightly and said, Zhang Chuan, you are really haunted. When he said this, Wang Lei frowned even more tightly. He found that he couldn't see through Zhang Chuan's cultivation at this time. Although as time goes by, with Zhang Chuan's talent, he will one day surpass him. But Wang Lei remembered that he had just played with the opponent half a month ago. At that time, Zhang Chuan's cultivation level was only at the 2nd layer of the Dragon Transformation Realm, but he already had the cultivation of the 5th layer of the Dragon Transformation Realm. As a result, only half a month had passed, and he was still in the 5th layer of the Dragon Transformation Realm, while Zhang Chuan was becoming more and more unfathomable. Could it be that Zhang Chuan was hiding his clumsiness in the previous battles? Wang Lei murmured in his heart. Zhang Chuan smiled faintly when he heard this. What? If the great sage Wang wants to ask for advice, Zhang will be with you at any time. Anger flashed in Wang Lei's eyes. He glanced at the disciples behind Zhang Chuan and said gloomily, there's no need to ask for advice. If you want to fight, I'll wait for you in Panxi Valley. In Wang Lei's opinion, Zhang Chuan chose to live in a manner with him because he wanted to use him as a stepping stone after he made great progress in cultivation. Before Zhang Chuan's strength is determined, he will not give the other party a chance to shine. Furthermore, if he was injured in the battle with Zhang Chuan, it would be extremely detrimental to his subsequent trip to Panxi Valley. At this time, Zhang Chuan seemed to see what Wang Lei was thinking, and chuckled. Hey, let me guess, you were also brought here by people from the great Zhou Divine Sovereign Dynasty, right? Hearing this, Wang Lei frowned suddenly and looked at Zhang Chuan, but what he received in response was a joking look. Wang Lei is naturally not the kind of fool who has strength but no brains. It can be seen from the fact that he cheated Zhang Chuan's predecessor of 300,000 high-grade spiritual stones that his thoughts are very delicate. In just a moment, Wang Lei understood the meaning of Zhang Chuan's words, and his face became terrifyingly gloomy. He really didn't expect that a small great Zhou Divine Sovereign Dynasty would dare to use him as a spearman. It seems that Brother Wang has some things to deal with. I'll take the first step. After saying that, Zhang Chuan clapped his hands and motioned for everyone to follow him. Then his body flashed and he was dozens of meters away in an instant. Seeing this, the Kangyuan sword sect and others behind him quickly mobilized their movements to follow. Before Luo Yue left, her eyes glanced back and forth between Zhang Chuan and Wang Lei, and she couldn't help but frown slightly. No, these 2 people have been fighting for so many years, but they didn't start fighting when they met today. Logically speaking, both of them want to prove themselves and will never miss this opportunity. Watching everyone in Zhangchuan leave, Wang Lei narrowed his eyes and turned to a member of the Wang family in a low voice. Let my 3rd uncle go to the Great Zhou Divine Sovereign Palace. I want to see how brave King Zhou is. As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Lei waved his hand and led everyone in the direction of Panxi Valley. Great Zhou Divine Sovereign Palace. At this time, King Zhou had just finished his morning court and was preparing to return to his palace to review the memorial. A minister suddenly ran out and hurriedly raised his hands and said, "Your Majesty, something serious has happened. Someone found the bodies of Li Chu, Chi'er and others in the back garden of the palace." King Zhou trembled when he heard this and almost lost his balance. Suddenly Long Yan said angrily, "What did you say? It doesn't make sense. Do you know who did it?" As he spoke, King Zhou's aura of great power surged out, almost crushing the ministers in front of him. Cold sweat broke out on the minister's forehead, and he wanted to bury his head in the ground. I saw him tremblingly reply, "Your Majesty, we have no way of knowing about this matter." The bodies of Li Chu and the others seemed to appear out of thin air in the back garden. And since they went to the border city today, they have only sent back news about the Wang family. As soon as these words came out, King Zhou's aura instantly decreased a lot. At this time, his eyes kept flickering, and he seemed to have thought of something in his heart, and a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth unnoticeably. The second elder was indeed right. As long as Zhang Chuan and Wang Lei were put together, the two would definitely fight. Now, in the view of King Zhou, the deaths of Li Chu and others were obviously caused by Zhang Chuan secretly looking for someone to do it. Want to give yourself a show of strength? Little did he know that he had fallen into the trap of himself and the second elder. At that time, as long as he stops Zhang Chuan and others for investigation on the grounds that the dynasty officials are missing, he will be able to make Kangyuan's sword sect one step slower than others. By that time, although Kangyuan's sword sect has lost face in the great Zhou Divine Sovereign, the second elder will definitely protect him. He could even use this incident to give Zhang Shiren a head-on blow. As for the Zhang family, if they insist on pursuing it, King Zhou can completely abdicate in favor of someone worthy of his position and escape according to the route given to him by the second elder. When the second elder wins the position of sect leader, he will also be able to enjoy all the cultivation resources. The master sword the world calls him. He's just a dandy with only strength. Just when King Zhou was secretly happy, he felt that he had caught Zhang Chuan's hand. I saw another minister hurriedly rushing to him with a pale face. It seemed that he was too panicked. He accidentally stepped on his feet and fell to his knees in front of King Zhou on the spot. King Zhou frowned. "How can you be so impatient and impetuous?" The ministers in front of King Zhou didn't even bother to stand up when they heard a low and cold voice coming from above their heads. "King Zhou, I think you are living your leisure life too comfortably, and how dare you not even take me seriously, the holy son of the Wang family." The sound was blessed by spiritual energy, as if it could pierce the eardrums, causing everyone below to cover their ears with painful expressions. When King Zhou saw the visitor, his pupils shrank and his mouth opened slightly, but what he wanted to say was stuck in his throat and he couldn't say it. Wang family. Why do people from the Wang family come here? Although the second elder has the ability to manage the affairs of Kangyuan's sword sect, the other party has no ability to reach out to the Wang family. What exactly is going on? Didn't Zhang Chuan and Wang Lei always get along? Why would the Wang family come to cause trouble for him? King Zhou stumbled back to the fence, leaning on the fence with his back and slowly sliding down until he fell to the ground. His face was ashen, and his lips were even bloodless. He knew that even the second elder could not protect him, and even his great Zhou Divine Sovereign dynasty had to change. Panxi Valley, the origin of this place name, does not mean that the place is covered with cobwebs everywhere. Rather, the terrain of this valley is like a spider web structure, crisscrossing and shrouded in mist, making it easy for ordinary people to get lost in it. Recently, the fog in Panxi Valley has become thicker than in previous years. Even for monks like Zhang Chuan and other Dragon Transformation Realm monks, their vision in the fog was reduced to less than 50 meters, let alone others. As soon as Kangyuan's sword sect and others entered Panxi Valley, they took out a red candle and lit it, and slowly moved toward the edge of Panxi Valley by the light of the fire. The candles in their hands were specially prepared for them by the sect. All candles passed through Zhang Chuan's hands and were finally distributed to everyone by Wang Dashang. The candlelight emitted after being lit can greatly isolate the surrounding gray fog. The candle in Luo Yue's hand was obviously half shorter than the others. When she got the candle, she was not surprised. If Wang Dashang didn't do something about this matter, then she would have to be vigilant. At this time, Luo Yue landed at the end of the queue with half a candle. When she raised her eyes, she saw the gloating eyes of Zhou Bin and Wang Dashang. Seeing this scene, Luo Yue couldn't help but sneer inwardly. These two people want to join forces to attack themselves in Pansy Valley. I guess it was because the group was so nervous in the mist that even if one person was missing, no one would pay attention. Just thinking about Luo Yue makes her feel ridiculous. She had experienced this kind of little trick thousands of years ago in her previous life. She is now tens of thousands of times stronger than when she first joined the sect in her previous life. Luo Yue hasn't taken this little thing to heart yet. If Zhou Bin and the other two still dare to take the opportunity to cause trouble for her, then don't blame her for being cruel. Along the way in the previous life, being able to become a quasi-emperor depends not only on the Taoyuan immortal body that makes the world jealous. In the thousands of years of getting along with each other, she also learned from Zhang Chuan that in the cruel world of immortal cultivation, if you are not cruel to others, you will only be the one who ends up in the end. Luo Yue's eyes flashed with a cold light, and at the same time, her pace gradually slowed down. The other side, the people at the front were blocked by an uninvited guest. The creature looked like a scorpion, but it had a thick lizard tail. The whole body is light gray and the body is 3 meters long. If it hadn't been for everyone's candlelight, they really wouldn't have been able to spot it. This is Manju Scorpion. That's not right, we are only at the edge of Pansy Valley, how could we encounter the man-lizard scorpion? Let me come. I've been out for so long and my hands are itching unbearably. After seeing the man-lizard scorpion, some people were worried, while others volunteered and wanted to show off in front of everyone. That man-lizard scorpion is only the first layer of Dao Palace realm. Zhang Chuan had no intention of taking action. He slowly stepped aside and handed over this hard work to other disciples. On the surface, the lizard scorpion does not have any weaknesses. The light gray armor on its body can even resist attacks from spiritual soldiers, and the lizard tail can be reborn in a short time. But the strength of the disciples of Kengyuan sword sect cannot be underestimated. At this time, 2 inner disciples from the Dao Palace realm came out of the group. As fellow disciples of the same main peak, their cooperation could be regarded as a tacit understanding. I saw one person attracting firepower in front of the man-lizard scorpion, and the other person was holding a spiritual weapon to continuously carry out the millennium killing behind the man-lizard scorpion. Under that disciple's crazy, 1,000-year killing, Manju Scorpion's tail could not heal itself at all. The horrific amount of bleeding caused him to fall to the ground unwillingly due to excessive blood loss. Seeing the two excitedly distributing their spoils, the disciples at the back couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Many inner disciples were beating their chests in their hearts and regretting more and more that they did not take action first. If the corpse of the man-lizard scorpion was brought back to the sect and sold, it could be sold for at least thousands of low-grade spiritual stones. This is worth several months of their salary. Luo Yue couldn't help frowning as she looked at Manjiaoxi's body. Suddenly, she seemed to remember something, and her pupils shrank suddenly. Don't worry about the body of Manju Scorpion, let's get out of here quickly. The corpse of the man-lizard scorpion after death will attract similar people around it to come and devour it. Luo Yue dissuaded loudly. In her previous life, she had been in and out of Pansy Valley no less than 10 times, and she accidentally discovered the story of the man-lizard and scorpion devouring the corpses of its kind. At that time, Luo Yue was already a strong person in the King realm. She was too lazy to bend down even if she picked up high-grade spirit stones on the road, let alone the body of the man-lizard scorpion. Whenever she kills a man-lizard scorpion, a large group of man-lizard scorpions will come and eat them up in just a few seconds. She was already accustomed to such small things, so she didn't think of it immediately just now. When the 2 inner disciples heard this, they looked indifferent and said, "Junior Sister Yang, what are you talking about? If the man-lizard scorpion is really capable of cannibalism, how could we not know about this kind of thing? This man-lizard scorpion is so huge that our universe bag won't be able to fit it in without cutting it open. Besides, just cutting up the body won't take much time at all." After saying that, the two began to cut up the body of Manju Scorpion again. Others looked at Luo Yue with a bit of strangeness. Obviously, they also felt that the other party was being alarmist. Wang Dashang stood beside Zhang Chuan and asked in a low voice, "Sir, is what junior sister Yang said true or false?" Zhang Chuan seemed to have not heard Wang Dashang's words at this time, and his eyes were always fixed on Luo Yue. After the other party finished speaking, he felt a slight vibration coming from the ground under his feet. It seemed like a group of creatures were coming from all directions. Zhang Chuan was silent for a long time, then looked at the gray fog behind him and chuckled. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter anymore. Wang Dashang tilted his head when he heard this, not quite understanding what Zhang Chuan meant. Zhang Chuan glanced at the other party, pointed behind him and said, "They have arrived." Arrived. While speaking, Wang Dashang turned his head stiffly and looked behind him, and then cold sweat broke out on his back. By the bright candlelight, he finally knew who Zhang Chuan was talking about. It was a large group of lizard scorpions, and they had surrounded the Kengyuan sword sect without any sound. There were hundreds of lizards and scorpions appearing in Wang Dashang's field of vision. At this moment, not only Zhang Chuan and others, but others also naturally noticed the approach of the man-lizard and scorpion group. Among them was a giant lizard scorpion that was dozens of times larger than other lizard scorpions. Its whole body was yellow, and the large pincers on both sides of its body were as tall as two people. What the hell is going on? Then that big monster can't be the leader of the man-lizard scorpion, right? The aura emanating from the leader of the man-lizard and scorpion makes me feel like I'm facing an elder from the four extremes realm of my family. Is what junior sister Yang said all true? There are so many man-lizard scorpions, we won't die here, right? Can you have some ambition? Don't forget that we still have senior brother Zhang. Senior brother, are you embarrassed to speak to me? If you have the ability, please don't shake your legs when you speak. The two inner disciples who cut up the corpse were sweating profusely and shaking like chaff. They looked at Luo Yue with a wry smile. Junior sister Yang, if we throw the body out now, will those guys evacuate? The two of them knew clearly that they were facing such a huge swarm of lizards and scorpions. Even if he is as strong as Zhangchuan, he cannot guarantee that everyone present will not be injured. Whoever may be the first unlucky person may be the one. Of course, the most likely targets are the two of them who cut up the corpse of the man-lizard scorpion and left the scent of the man-lizard scorpion on their bodies. Luo Yue shook her head when she heard this, and at the same time looked at the slender and lazy figure in the front. Will he make the same choice as in his previous life? In the memory of Luo Yue's previous life, Zhangchuan did not take action to resist the attack of the man-lizard and scorpion swarm. Instead, they pulled out a few new disciples with no background and low level to become the food of the man-lizard scorpion. Not only was there no objection to this approach, but it was unanimously approved by everyone. Indeed, for everyone present, this is the method with the least loss. Fighting in the misty Pansy Valley, Zhangchuan simply couldn't take care of everyone. If a war really breaks out, a large number of disciples will definitely die. Although Zhang Chuan's approach is cold-blooded, this is the law of the jungle in the immortal cultivation world. The weak eat the strong, and the weak have no choice at all. Facing the expectant gazes of everyone, Zhang Chuan showed no emotion and just said calmly, "New disciples who join the sect." Hearing this, Luo Yue already understood in her heart that Zhang Chuan would still give up some new disciples and keep others just like in his previous life. Come to me, and others should protect them. I can kill these little bugs with one sword. As Zhang Chuan finished his next sentence, Luo Yue suddenly raised her eyes and looked at him with a look of surprise. Why did everything related to Zhang Chuan in her previous life fail to match up in this life? Moreover, wanting to stand out alone at this time, in Luo Yue's opinion, was undoubtedly asking for death. Based on her understanding of Zhang Chuan, the other party was simply someone who could die for him and she would never take the risk. The leader of the man-lizard scorpion has the strength of the peak of the four extremes realm. Coupled with the huge number of ordinary man-lizard scorpions, how can Zhang Chuan alone have a chance of winning? Even though Luo Yue has lived in two lives now, she still doesn't understand the reason why Zhang Chuan did this. She shook her head, not getting an answer, and she didn't think about it anymore. If Zhang Chuan was injured here, it would be a great thing for her. Seeing that everyone did as he said, they gathered together and stood together. Zhang Chuan tapped his toes and jumped 10 meters away from the leader of Man-Lizard-Scorpion alone. As if feeling the terrifying coercion that was constantly gushing from Zhang Chuan, the man-lizards and scorpions around him kept roaring, and no one dared to take a step forward. Zhang Chuan raised his head and stared at the huge head of the leader of the man-lizard-scorpion, his expression extremely dull. From Zhang Chuan's point of view, in this kind of battle, he only needs to capture the thief first, and the man-lizard-scorpion minions underneath him will be defeated without any attack. But if it were him before he got the system, Zhang Chuan would not be sure to kill the leader of the man-lizard-scorpion immediately. This kind of creature is famous for its tenacious vitality even in the history of Dongzhou. The man-lizard-scorpion at the peak of the quadruple realm can block at least 3 moves of its predecessor, and in the time of 3 moves, everyone else will definitely be eaten up and wiped out by the man-lizard-scorpion swarm. But today's Zhang Chuan is at the pinnacle of the dragon transformation realm, and at the same time, he has received 10,000 times the power of all phenomena after returning it. He has not yet tested his strength. After increasing the power of all phenomena, where is his limit? I saw the palm of his right hand turned over and formed into sword fingers, and wisps of sharp sword intent from his body suddenly poured into his fingertips. Breaking the river with 1 finger. After the words fell, Zhang Chuan slowly pointed out his sword. The terrifying power steamed and poured out, and the surrounding fog was actually cut into a huge gap by the invisible sword energy. At the same time, the fog was flying and winding, and the terrifying vibrations gradually formed a sky-filled storm. Zhang Chuan's clothes were flying, his face was calm, and his eyes were looking at the leader of the man-lizard-scorpion for a moment. I saw a thin line that was extremely difficult to see with the naked eye suddenly appearing on the head of the leader of man-lizard-scorpion. Then the thin line continued to extend downward until it reached the ground. The leader of the man-lizard-scorpion roared, and 2 huge pliers were ready to slam down on Zhang Chuan. "Senior brother Zhang, get out of here!" A disciple of Kengyuan's sword sect exclaimed behind him. "Ah!" Several inexperienced female disciples even covered their eyes in fear, fearing that a bloody scene would appear in front of them in the next second. It would take a hit, and the monk's fragile body would have to shed its skin even if he didn't die. Compared to the other disciples, Luo Yue froze on the spot, looking at Zhang Chuan with shock and disbelief in her eyes. Zhang Chuan seemed not to have heard the reminder from the people behind him at this time, and stood still without evading. When the tongs were less than 5 meters away from Zhang Chuan's face, the corners of his mouth suddenly curved. Immediately afterwards, the 2 huge pliers stopped in front of Zhang Chuan, unable to move forward another half inch. Everyone raised their heads in confusion, and the scene in front of them made their hearts suddenly stop and they were speechless. An extremely obvious green line suddenly appeared from top to bottom on the body of the leader of the man-lizard-scorpion, and green blood was constantly spurting out from it. Immediately afterwards, the leader of man-lizard-scorpion was split into 2 halves. The cut cross-section is even more smooth, and even has a glossy reflection when illuminated by candlelight. The fallen body of the leader of the man-lizard-scorpion overwhelmed a large number of man-lizard-scorpions. Seeing their eldest brother being pointed out to death, the other man-lizards and scorpions immediately became confused and fled in all directions. "Senior brother Zhang is mighty. I didn't expect that senior brother Yang's strength would improve again. When can I see senior brother Yang's heels?" Based on what senior brother Zhang pointed out just now, there will definitely be big changes in Tianji Pavilion's ranking list next week. The joy on everyone's faces showed, and they all ran forward and surrounded Zhang Chuan in the center. Zhang Chuan waved his hand. "Don't stay here for too long. The safe zone is not far away. Let's leave quickly before the candle burns out." Everyone responded in unison, quickly adjusted their posture, and lined up behind Zhang Chuan. Ignoring the body of the leader of the man-lizard-scorpion lying on the side, Zhang Chuan led everyone through the fog and disappeared here. In less than half a moment, Zhang Chuan and others saw a glimmer of light flashing before their eyes after turning a corner. With the appearance of light, the huge stone in the hearts of all the disciples fell to the ground safely. Zhang Chuan was the first to touch the bright light, and then his eyes fell into a trance. By the time he reacted, he had already walked out of the fog, and his vision instantly became empty. After looking around, everyone found that they had not been teleported elsewhere, but were still in Pansy Valley. It's just that the fog that blocked everyone's sight has been completely cleared here. After several inner disciples who had experience in Pansy Valley explained it, others realized that this was the safe zone that senior brother Zhang said. This Pure Land is a peerless formation set up by a great monk from the conferred sovereign realm using heaven-reaching means. Although the coverage of the formation is only a few miles in radius, compared to the thousands of miles of Pansy Valley, it is like a drop of ink dripping on a white paper. It seems trivial, but it affects the entire white paper. The Pansy Valley is extremely dangerous, and having this safe area to rest also provides more protection for those who come after the experience in the Pansy Valley. Zhang Chuan glanced at everyone in the Kengyuan sword sect and found that Luo Yue and Zhou Bin were missing among them. Obviously, the two of them did not come out of the fog to the safe zone with them at all. Zhang Chuan glanced at Wang Dashang beside him, and the hint in his eyes was very obvious. The other party understood immediately, and with the help of Zhang Chuan, he avoided everyone's sight and secretly left the safe area with the candle given by Zhang Chuan. Before Zhang Chuan and others entered the safe zone, the candle in Luo Yue's hand had burned out. She was not worried that she would get lost in the fog of Pansy Valley. Luo Yue could still tell the location of the safe zone by relying on her past life memories. At this moment, she stood there, still replaying Zhang Chuan's shocking finger in her mind. Although it is impossible to tell Zhang Chuan's current state, judging from the power of the Duanzhang finger move. Zhang Chuan's strength is definitely more than the third layer of the dragon realm mentioned in the rumors. Compared with her previous life, Luo Yue found that Zhang Chuan in this life was even more unfathomable. The powerless feeling of being unable to touch the opponent's back no matter how hard he tried in his previous life seemed to be coming back again. She seemed to have turned back into that ignorant, weak girl. No, I still have a chance. The memory of my previous life and my Taoyuan immortal body are my trump cards to win. Luo Yue's eyes were shining brightly. She believed that based on her understanding of spiritual practice in her previous life, she would reach the Saint Realm one step ahead of Zhang Chuan. But now, she also needs to deal with a certain fly who is trying to take advantage of her. Luo Yue glanced around with cold eyes, and finally settled on the fog on the right. She casually threw the burned candle in her hand at her feet, opened her red lips and said lightly, "A hiding rat, an inner disciple of Qinglong Peak. You are far worse than the King Big Bear." As Luo Yue finished speaking, a cold snort came from the mist beside Luo Yue. Then Zhou Bin's figure stepped forward slowly, his expression was joking, and Luo Yue in front of him seemed to him like a little lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Zhou Bin shook the half-burned candle in his hand and sneered. "Junior Sister Yang, don't get me wrong. I heard that you ran out of candles, so I came here to take you out. How are you going to thank me, senior brother?" While talking, Zhou Bin kept walking, approaching Luo Yue step by step. The current situation can be said to be that he has the right time, right place, and right people at the same time. Zhou Bin didn't even know how he lost. He had long coveted Luo Yue's alluring figure. At this time, Zhou Bin looked at Luo Yue with a fierce glare, as if his bestiality would come out in the next second. Seeing this, Luo Yue immediately showed disgust. "It seems that you are really not afraid of death. If you take another step forward, I will cut off your arms." There was already a hint of anger in Luo Yue's words at this time. Hearing this, Zhou Bin chuckled and shook his head. "Junior Sister Yang, it seems that you haven't seen the current situation clearly yet. I, Zhou Bin, am a Dao Palace monk. I just stand and let you fight. Can you break through my defense? Junior Sister Yang, I will give you a chance. As long as you become a Taoist partner with me, I will not only not make things difficult for you, but I will also take you to a safe zone." There was no worry on Zhou Bin's face at this moment. For him, dealing with a new female disciple who joins the sect is completely easy. Moreover, he still holds the life-saving straw that determines whether the other party can go to the safe zone. Zhou Bin didn't believe that Luo Yue would not obey. He looked at Luo Yue with a joking face, and at the same time took another step. But Zhou Bin regretted it the next second. Luo Yue's eyes were focused on the opposite side, and an ethereal and fierce aura suddenly burst out from her body. The surrounding fog actually began to rage and become chaotic with this momentum. The terrifying wind speed made Zhou Bin uncontrollably narrow his eyes. Feeling that Luo Yue's aura was far stronger than his own, Zhou Bin's legs trembled and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. Four extremes. When he looked at Luo Yue, his eyes turned from joyful to sad. Is this really the strength that a new disciple who has just joined the sect can possess? Zhou Bin wanted to escape, but found that no matter how he hid in the fog, there was always a gaze staring directly at him. He knew that with his cultivation at the fourth layer of the Dao Palace realm, he might not be able to take even one of the opponent's moves. Just when Zhou Bin turned around and was about to start a series of scenes where he cried bitterly and knelt down to beg for mercy, the scene in front of him stunned him and froze him in place. I saw Luo Yue raising her sword fingers with one hand, and the sword intention slowly turned into two blue long swords. As she pointed her sword finger, the two long swords shot out at high speed. Zhou Bin didn't even have time to react. In the next second, both of his arms were cut off by the opponent's sharp long sword that gathered his sword intent. He stared blankly at the empty sides of his body, with fluffy blood splattering on his face and residual warmth. How can this be? Zhou Bin murmured, his face pale, like a child who had not eaten for several days and was extremely weak. His body shook weakly, and then he fell to his knees. Luo Yue's face was indifferent. She just glanced at Zhou Bin who was kneeling and shaking, then walked straight to a broken arm and took the candle out of its palm. Just when Luo Yue was about to turn around and leave, Zhou Bin's weak voice sounded again. Junior Sister Yang, please spare my life. Considering that we are from the same sect, as long as you take me to a safe area, I will never tell anyone what happened today. At this time, Zhou Bin looked a little flustered, and the blood spurting from his arms dyed his disciple's clothes red. He stood up with difficulty, his legs trembling as he tried to step forward. Luo Yue didn't even turn her head when she heard this. She pointed out another sword point, and the sharp sword energy cut a deep ravine under Zhou Bin's feet. Seeing Luo Yue disappear into the mist, cold sweat broke out on Zhou Bin's forehead. He was convinced that if he had taken another step forward just now, he might not even be able to save his legs. Now that he has lost his arms and candles, Zhou Bin is undoubtedly sentenced to death in the crisis-ridden Panxi Valley. His body collapsed to the ground. In despair, he suddenly remembered that the other half of the candle that originally belonged to Luo Yue was in his universe bag. At this moment, Zhou Bin was like a drowning man grabbing the last straw. He bent over desperately and grabbed the universe bag at his waist with his mouth. Sure enough, the half of the candle is still there. Zhou Bin's eyes lit up, and he quickly used his spiritual consciousness to take out half of the candle from the universe bag. But suddenly, a candlelight lit up in front of him, illuminating his pale and excited face. Zhou Bin raised his head stiffly. When he saw the person coming, he didn't even care about his embarrassing appearance. His knees kept rubbing against the ground and he said happily, "Brother Wang, great, are you here to save me?" Zhou Bin couldn't help but feel lucky that he had asked Wang Dashang to cooperate before taking action, otherwise he would have really fallen into trouble this time. Wang Dashang's rough face was expressionless under the candlelight, and suddenly a sneer appeared on his face. "Zhou Bin, I've been looking for you for a long time. I'll send you away now." Wang Dashang's cold smile made Zhou Bin shudder. He tried his best to put on an ugly smile, stood up with difficulty, and wanted to tell Wang Dashang what had happened before. Before he could speak, Wang Dashang took one step forward and hit Zhou Bin on the chest with a mountain collapse fist. Zhou Bin looked at the other party in disbelief, and blood began to flow uncontrollably from his mouth. "Zhou Bin, the person our young master wants is not something that a country chicken like you can touch." Wang Dashang put his mouth to Zhou Bin's ear and explained in a low voice. Zhou Bin's mood at this time was like falling from heaven to hell. He never dreamed that he would be played around by several people throughout the whole process. Wang Dashang smiled gloomily and gave Zhou Bin a gentle push on the shoulder, causing the other person's body to fall straight back. His punch just now had shattered Zhou Bin's heart to pieces, and even gods could not save him. As if he had just done a trivial thing, Wang Dashang's face was expressionless at the moment, with no psychological burden. Then he didn't stay any longer and turned around and rushed towards the safe area. Within the safe zone, Ning Xin looked at her classmates who were laughing and discussing around her, and then at Zhang Chuan who was sitting not far away with his eyes closed and concentrating, with a puzzled look on his face. Where have Yang Yue and the two senior brothers gone? Ning Xin murmured in a low voice. Although she was hostile to Luo Yue when she first joined the sect. But after the other party pointed out her mistakes in practicing the secret technique the next day, her attitude towards him changed drastically. Although Ning Xin was born into a wealthy family in the Baji domain, she was doted on by her parents and brothers. But there were not many friends with whom she could really talk, and she still hoped to make a few friends in the Kengyuan sword sect. Now that Ning Xin had not seen Luo Yue for a long time, she began to feel nervous for her. Then she looked at Zhang Chuan again. Ning Xin pursed her lips, silently cheered herself up in her heart, and ran to Zhang Chuan with small steps. Zhang, senior brother Zhang, senior brother Yang Yue and senior brother Zhou Bin seem to be missing. I haven't seen them since we entered the safe zone. When Ning Xin said this, she did not look directly at Zhang Chuan's face. She always lowered her head and looked at her toes. Zhang Chuan smiled faintly when he heard this. I already know about this matter. I have sent Wang Dashang back to search for it. I think there will be results soon. He couldn't help but find it interesting when he saw Ning Xin bowing her head shyly. At first, Zhang Chuan thought that Ning Xin was a spoiled eldest lady by her family and would be extremely arrogant in the Kengyuan sword sect. Now the other party was worried about Luo Yue's safety, which Zhang Chuan did not expect. Less than half a moment later, it turned out to be exactly what Zhang Chuan said. Wang Dashang returned to the safe area with an ugly expression. Under the gaze of everyone, he slowly took out a severed arm. Wang Dashang closed his eyes and shook his head, saying in a hoarse voice. Zhou, senior brother Zhou Bin, he had an accident in the fog. I didn't find his body, I just found this severed arm on the road. As he spoke, Wang Dashang covered his face with one hand, looking like he was crying. Everyone looked at the severed arm in Wang Dashang's hand and couldn't help but take a breath. From the remaining sleeves on the broken arm, it can be seen that the owner of this broken arm must be a member of the Kengyuan sword sect. In addition, there were irregular bite marks on the incision of the severed arm. Everyone speculated that Zhou Bin must have been lost in Panxi Valley and encountered a powerful and unstoppable monster. Many people felt sad that the rabbit had died and the fox had died. At the same time, they were glad that they could follow senior brother Zhang and not get lost in it. Seeing Wang Dashang covering his face in pain, everyone couldn't help but sigh. Zhou Bin really made a good brother. Zhang Chuan stepped forward and patted Wang Dashang on the shoulder, saying with a heavy heart. Big Shang, please forgive me. People cannot be resurrected after death. I will definitely avenge junior brother Zhou Bin for him in the future. Let's bury him properly when we get back. These 10 high-grade spiritual stones will be handed over to Zhou Binyuan's family in a foreign land for me. Upon hearing this, Wang Dashang solemnly took the spirit stone and turned his head to the side to prevent others from seeing his expression at this moment. Because he really couldn't hold it in any longer. Wow, thank you, sir. Wang Dashang tried his best to let out a cry, and suppressed a smile to thank Zhang Chuan. Everyone present looked at the high-grade spiritual stone in Wang Dashang's hand and swallowed their saliva. At the same time, they became more and more convinced of their senior brother Zhang. Who wouldn't want to sacrifice their lives for a senior who can offer 10 high-grade spiritual stones as compensation for his subordinates without hesitation? Feeling the fiery gazes of the disciples around him, Zhang Chuan couldn't help but twitch his lips. If they were to know that I lost 300,000 high-grade spiritual stones once when I went to a stone gambling shop. I don't know if they still think so. Then Zhang Chuan's eyes paused for a moment in front of the entrance to the safe zone, and he frowned. Where is junior sister Yang Yue? Zhang Chuan asked. Junior sister Yang, isn't it already? Wang Dashang thought Luo Yue had returned to the safe zone and almost blurted out his thoughts. But after scanning around, he found that Luo Yue was not there. Then his expression changed and he said, I saw junior sister Yang on the way here. Well, she won't encounter any accidents on the way, right? That was the mission Zhang Chuan gave him. Now that the mission target was gone, he was afraid that Zhang Chuan would take back the 10 high-grade spiritual stones he had given him earlier. Hearing this, Zhang Chuan looked around. Although no trace of Luo Yue was found, with the opponent's huge power of luck, even if there is danger, the opponent can still avoid danger. There was no need for him to worry about this. Maybe Luo Yue was hiding somewhere in the safe zone at the moment. Zhang Chuan thought deeply for a while, and then said, if that's the case, then it's no problem. I saw that junior sister Yang had too few candles, so I pointed her to another entrance. I guess she has come in through another entrance. After hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement. I didn't expect senior brother Zhang to be so thoughtful and caring for new disciples. Yes, I will definitely follow the example of senior brother Zhang from now on. Kang Yuan's sword sect and his party did not consume much physical energy before entering the safe zone. Zhang Chuan walked to the front of the team and said seriously, okay, don't sit still, let's go deeper inside. Hearing this, everyone present did not dare to neglect, and all responded, rushing to stand behind Zhang Chuan, eager to press their whole bodies up. Zhang Chuan didn't pay attention to everyone's reaction. He could feel that the recent surge of fog in Panxi Valley must be related to the loosening of a seal somewhere in the periphery. Zhang Chuan also heard the information about the seal from his father. It is rumored that there are several small secret realms hidden in Panxi Valley. Because few people have approached the innermost secret realm for many years, the seal has remained intact to this day. However, after a group of monks explored a small secret realm near Panxi Valley, the seal could no longer be suppressed. The fog outside Panxi Valley leaks from the secret realm. Now that the fog is raging in the periphery, even the lizards and scorpions have begun to march towards the edge. It seems that the seal of that secret realm can no longer hold on for long. What they have to do now is to find the secret place and completely unlock the seal. As long as the inheritance in the secret realm is taken away, the fog will not last long. Zhang Chuan estimated that the sect's senior officials had known this for a long time. From the beginning, they had asked him to lead the team because they wanted him to fight for the inheritance of the secret realm for the younger generation of Kang Yuan's sword sect. Boom! Before Zhang Chuan could think too much, a huge roar suddenly sounded. The ground kept undulating and shaking, and some new disciples who didn't react almost lost their center of gravity and fell to the ground. Zhang Chuan stepped into a deep pit on the ground. While steadying his body, he couldn't help but look in the direction of the loud noise. He frowned slightly and suddenly thought something was wrong. That loud noise actually came from the safe zone. In this situation, there is only one possibility at the moment, and that is that someone takes a step ahead of Zhang Chuan and the others and unlocks the seal of the secret realm. Zhang Chuan knew that he could no longer lead his disciples forward slowly at this time. I saw him using his body skills to take a step forward, taking the lead to distance himself from everyone, and his figure pointed in one direction and flew away at high speed. The inheritance in the secret realm must not allow others to get there first. He has to rely on the inheritance in it to cultivate a little money tree. The people behind him more or less guessed what was going on, and they all used their fastest body skills to keep up with Zhang Chuan's pace. In less than a minute, Zhang Chuan arrived at the destination of his trip. I saw a secret passage condensed by wisps of gray mist and constantly rotating, appearing very abruptly on the stone wall directly in front of the river. At the same time, there were two groups of people in front of the stone wall, staring at each other with eager eyes, deadlocked in place. One group of people were the Wang family members that Zhang Chuan had met previously in the Great Zhou Divine Sovereign Dynasty. The other group of Zhang Chuan didn't have much impression, thinking that the leader of the other group had nothing to do with Zhang Chuan's predecessor. Neither party made any move to enter the secret realm for a while, but instead were wary of each other outside the secret realm. But with the arrival of Zhang Chuan, this balance was immediately broken. The eyes of both parties present looked towards Zhang Chuan. Many people's expressions suddenly became unnatural. Originally, they could allocate things properly, but now the arrival of Zhang Chuan and others has caused subtle changes in the situation. Wang Lei's expression changed even more. As we all know, his relationship with Zhang Chuan has always been incompatible. Next, Zhang Chuan will most likely put pressure on himself together with his opponent, and everyone in the Wang family will definitely be squeezed into the secret realm at the end. The disciples of the Kangyuan sword sect who came from behind also stood behind Zhang Chuan warily, casting provocative looks towards the opposite side from time to time. At this moment, Zhang Chuan seems to be much calmer and lighter. Since no one has entered the secret realm yet, it will be much easier for him. The highest realm of the two groups of people on the opposite side is the fifth layer of the dragon transformation realm. For him now, even 2 more rounds will have no effect. Just when the 3 parties have different attitudes, and the war seems to be about to break out. Ning Xin, who was standing behind Zhang Chuan, suddenly shouted excitedly. "Brother, second sister, why are you here too?" As soon as these words came out, everyone present turned their attention to Ning Xin. Only then did Ning Xin realize that there were so many people watching around her, and she immediately hid behind Zhang Chuan in embarrassment. Opposite the Wang family, the man and woman who were facing Wang Lei heard Ning Xin's cry, and their eyes lit up. "Exoner," the two said in unison, looking at Ning Xin with worried eyes. They are the eldest son Ning Yuan and the second young lady Ning Shui of the Ning family. The Ning family's mission to explore Panxi Valley was led by these two. Neither of them expected that Ning Xin would be sent to Panxi Valley for training as soon as she joined Kangyuan sword sect. They walked in all the way, but they knew how uneasy the surroundings of Panxi Valley had been recently. Ning Xin looked at Ning Yuan and the other two, and then turned her gaze to Zhang Chuan. After getting Zhang Chuan's nod in agreement, her beautiful eyes lit up, and she ran to Ning Yuan, and Ning Yuan excitedly hugged Ning Shui's slender waist and said coquettishly, "Big brother and second sister, I miss you so much." Ning Shui patted Ning Xin's head lovingly, her eyes full of smiles. Ning Yuan glanced at Zhang Chuan across the way, leaned into Ning Xin's ear and said meaningfully, "Exoner, how has your progress been since you went to Kangyuan sword sect?" "Oh, brother, what are you talking about?" When Ning Xin heard the words, she immediately understood the meaning of the other party's words. Her face suddenly turned red and she hurriedly buried her body into Ning Shui's chest. Seeing this, Ning Yuan and Ning Shui just looked at each other and smiled without saying anything. As elders, they naturally knew that Ning Xin had admired Zhang Chuan since she was a child. Zhang Chuan is a talented monster, and the Zhang family behind him is even worse than the Ning family. The Ning family has always had a good relationship with the Zhang family, and the two families have kept things secret between them. Otherwise, the Ning family would not let their most favored third lady join the Kangyuan sword sect. Now that Ning Xin has this relationship, Kangyuan sword sect and the Ning family have obviously formed a bond. The faces of everyone in the Wang family couldn't help but look sad. Unexpectedly, Zhang Chuan suddenly laughed and glanced around the Ning and Wang children, like a king who despised the world. He said calmly, "Since we happen to meet you here, don't waste your time. I put my words here today. I, Kangyuan sword sect, want this secret realm. If you are not convinced, we can come together." Logically speaking, it would be an excellent thing to join forces with Ning Yuan and others to kick Wang Lei aside first. But Zhang Chuan doesn't think so. For him, one dragon transformation realm can be suppressed with one hand, and 2 of them are equally without pressure. Sooner or later, everyone will have to fight for the inheritance of the secret realm. It is better to block Ning Yuan, Wang Lei and others directly from the secret realm. By then, Luo Yue's chance of getting the inheritance is almost 100%. This is what he wants to see. As for the Ning family, Zhang Chuan never cared about it. As soon as these words came out, the whole place fell silent. Even Kangyuan sword sect and others looked puzzled, and for a moment they couldn't understand why their senior brother Zhang said such harsh words on the spot. Doing this will offend both Ning and Wang families at the same time. Their small bodies could not withstand the charge of 2 genius disciples. Ning Yuan was also stunned on the spot. His previous willingness to cooperate was almost written on his face. Is this Zhang Chuan stupid? Does he really think that since he was ranked 3rd by Tianji Pavilion, he has the strength to fight against 2? Seeing Zhang Chuan's domineering side, Ning Yuan couldn't help but shake his head. He couldn't help but worry about his third sister. If the other party really got along with Zhang Chuan would take advantage of her. Everyone in the Wang family looked at Zhang Chuan with a hint of weirdness in their eyes. Wang Lei frowned and looked straight at Zhang Chuan. Based on his understanding of Zhongchuan, it is impossible for the opponent to fight an uncertain battle. From Zhang Chuan's domineering words, Wang Lei heard a strong sense of self-confidence, which was an invincible belief that he was the only one. He had only experienced this feeling with the person who was number one on the list of geniuses. Wang Lei smiled bitterly and shook his head. Zhang Chuan, based on your words, I am indeed not as good as you. However, if you want to fight, I, Wang Lei, will always accompany you. After the shock of the Ning and Wang families, their faces were filled with anger. As members of a wealthy family in the Baji domain, they naturally have arrogance in their hearts. Now that Zhang Chuan is uttering arrogant words and being so domineering, do you really think they are made of mud? Ning Yuan lowered his head and glanced at Ning Xin, only to see that the other person's eyes were starry at this moment, and the admiration in his eyes almost overflowed. He couldn't help but suspect that if he and Ning Shui were not here, Ning Xin might have started to cheer for Zhang Chuan. Ning Yuan turned his head and put his hand on his forehead, murmuring in his heart, my silly sister is really hopeless. Then he calmed down for a while, his eyes narrowed, and he raised his hands into the air. Ripples of spiritual energy continued to appear around his body, and his whole body suddenly felt more ethereal. As the contemporary saint son of the Ning family, Ning Yuan naturally ranks very high on the list of geniuses issued by Tianji Pavilion. Although it is a little worse than Zhang Chuan and Wang Lei, it is still in a high position of 8th place. The Ning family disciples below could not help but exclaim, their eyes full of admiration. It's our Ning family's Luo Yun Chu Shui Jing. It's worthy of being the Holy Sun. Just looking at it makes me feel my legs trembling. I heard that the Holy Sun is about to break through to the 6th layer of dragon transformation. That Zhang Chuan is definitely no match for our Holy Sun. Ning Yuan's aura was about to burst out, and he said coldly to Zhang Chuan below. In that case, let's fight in the air. With their cultivation in the dragon transformation realm, if there was a battle on the ground, even the aftermath of the outbreak would not be something those in the Wheel Sea and Dao Palace realm could withstand. Wang Lei, who was also a holy son of the same clan, looked up to the sky and smiled, and his whole body was filled with thunderous light. As thunder and lightning surged, a violent force burst out. Wang Lei stepped on his toes, lightning flashed, and his figure instantly came to Ning Yuan's side. Seeing the two men with terrifying auras in the sky, the disciples behind Zhang Chuan couldn't help but sweat. It was so powerful that they didn't even dare to look directly at it. Some of the new disciples with lower cultivation levels were a little breathless under the pressure of Ning Yuan and the two. Zhang Chuan snorted coldly, and following his thoughts, the sword origin code slowly started to operate. Immediately afterwards, a fierce momentum burst into the sky, and it actually competed with the two pressures in the sky, and began to check and balance each other. This scene immediately stunned the Ning and Wang children who were watching the battle. Then Zhang Chuan actually stopped two evil geniuses who were in the top 10 on the genius list. The two people standing in the air raised their eyebrows, then looked at each other, and an idea appeared in their minds at the same time. This Zhang Chuan might be the one who hides the deepest among the four great masters. The people behind Zhang Chuan were even more delighted, and they cheered and cheered for Zhang Chuan. Senior brother Zhang is mighty. Senior brother Zhang is invincible. Senior brother Zhang, I want to give birth to a monkey for you. The little Ning and Wang family are so ridiculous, our senior brother Zhang can suppress them with just a backhand. I know that senior brother Zhang has been hiding his clumsiness. How can we predict the combat power of a monster like senior brother Zhang? The corner of Zhang Chuan's mouth curled up, and his figure slowly rose into the air, reaching the same level as Ning Yuan. The three of them looked at each other from a distance, and the smell of gunpowder gradually became stronger. In the end, Wang Lei was the first to speak. Zhang Chuan, I underestimated you before, but I didn't expect you to hide it so deeply. During the Great Zhou Divine Sovereign Dynasty, he discovered something was wrong with Zhang Chuan's cultivation, but he did not expect that the other party could compete with himself and Ning Yuan alone. Fortunately, he had previously rejected Zhang Chuan's invitation to fight. If he was really injured before coming to Panxi Valley, this secret place would definitely be monopolized by Zhang Chuan. A smart person will not reveal all his methods to the world. Zhang Chuan said with a faint smile. Just as Zhang Chuan said, the momentum he has now to confront the two of them has actually not even used 70% of his own strength. However, Ning Yuan and his two men could not have imagined this. Instead, he felt that Zhang Chuan was personally admitting the fact that he was hiding his strength, and he nodded clearly for a moment. At the same time, the two men looked at Zhang Chuan more and more deeply. Being able to hide their own strength for decades, they can't help but feel inferior to such a city. Ning Yuan took a deep breath and said seriously, "It's useless to talk more. I, Ning Yuan, want to see how strong you really are." After the words fell, Ning Yuan made a move with his right hand, and a top-quality Earth Soldier sword appeared in his hand. Immediately afterwards, without saying a word, he slashed towards Zhang Chuan with his sword. A blue-white light bloomed from the sharp tip of the sword, and its power was extremely extraordinary. As the Ning family is one of the top wealthy families in the Baji domain, the family's secret method, the Luo Yunchu Shui Jing, cannot be underestimated. As the imperial scripture created by Luoyan Great Emperor hundreds of thousands of years ago. What he emphasizes is to use softness to overcome strength. When fighting with others, he can often be surprised and defeat the strong with the weak. Although the Jian Yuan holy scripture that Zhang Chuan is currently practicing is not as good as the Luo Yunchu Shui scripture, its offensive techniques are almost the same as the imperial scripture. There is no other reason. The first-generation founder of the Kengyuan sword sect relied on his self-created Zhanyuan holy code to reach the quasi-emperor level and fight from the top down. Counterattack against the great emperor. Although it is rumored that the battle ended in defeat, it also shows how powerful this technique is. Seeing the powerful sword approaching, Zhang Chuan did not dodge or even take out the weapon. I saw him directly stretching out a hand, and extremely powerful spiritual energy burst out instantly. This punch is the most extreme evolution of his power. With Zhang Chuan's current level of cultivation, there are only two types of people who can truly be his opponents. One is the monks who have gathered the immortal platform and entered the realm of great power. There is also the weirdo who is known as the leader of the four young masters. Although Ning Yuan and Zhang Chuan were both in the dragon transformation realm, the two of them had reached several smaller realms. That sword light was directly crushed by Zhang Chuan with one hand. After gaining the power of all things, he had few opponents at the same level. There was a burst of air, and Zhang Chuan's right hand holding Jian Guang suddenly exerted force. The sword that was strong enough to cut through the boulder was crushed by Zhang Chuan. While crushing the sword light, Zhang Chuan made a sword finger with his left hand and pointed it out. The terrifying and sharp sword force suddenly attacked Ning Yuan and the others. Kengyuan sword technique. I come. Facing the oncoming terrifying sword force, Wang Lei's eyes narrowed and he gritted his teeth and said. As he spoke, he gently raised his palm, and wisps of lightning from the sky and the earth suddenly poured into his palm, turning into a blue spear. The thunder light circled wildly on the spear like a snake. Ning Yuan, who was next to Wang Lei, couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Feeling Wang Lei's violent aura around him, Ning Yuan couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He is worthy of being among the top 4 in the list of geniuses. Even if I are at the same level as him, I will never be his opponent. The spear that was raging with lightning was thrown violently by Wang Lei. Under the collision of the spear and sword energy, terrifying spiritual energy rippled. The wave of air blew away Zhang Chuan's clothes. At this moment, he lowered his head and looked down, focusing on the entrance to the secret realm. Luo Yue's figure appeared near the entrance at some unknown time, as if she wanted to sneak into the secret realm while everyone present was attracted by the battle between Zhang Chuan and the others. Zhang Chuan smiled faintly and did not pay too much attention to the other party. Then he turned his right hand and pointed his finger in the direction of the two people opposite him. After Luo Yue dealt with Zhou Bin, she took the half candle and entered the safe area through another entrance. After that, she quickly found the members of the Kengyuan sword sect based on the memories of her previous life. She was not in a hurry to join Zhang Chuan and others, but hid in the dark, hoping to find an opportunity to act alone. Although Zhang Chuan was 1 against 2, the memory of Luo Yue's previous life still did not correspond. But, while being shocked by Zhang Chuan's terrifying combat power, she also saw the opportunity to enter the secret realm. While the attention of everyone present was not focused on the secret realm, Luo Yue slowly appeared and quietly came to the entrance of the secret realm. Ning Xin, who was surrounded by people from the Ning family not far away, suddenly wrinkled her nose and sneezed suddenly. Just when she turned around to ask Ning Shui for a handkerchief, she saw Luo Yue's tiptoeing figure at the edge of the secret realm from the corner of her eye. Suddenly she didn't care about asking for the handkerchief. Ning Xin stood on tiptoes with a joyful expression, waved in Luo Yue's direction, and shouted, "Yue, why are you here? Come and cheer for senior brother Zhang." As Ning Xin's voice sounded, the three parties present turned their heads and looked over. You won't know if you don't look at it, but you will be shocked when you look at it. Someone stole the house. Hey, over there, you don't want to sneak into the secret realm while I'm waiting to watch the battle, do you? Everyone, come on in. You Kengyuan sword sect is playing dirty tricks. HMPH, we must not let the people from Kengyuan sword sect go in first. Junior sister Yang, you did a great job this time. But can you join us next time? The crowd that had been watching the battle quietly suddenly became excited, and they all urged their bodies to run towards the entrance of the secret realm. Hearing the sound, Luo Yue, who was only a few steps away from the entrance to the secret realm, paused. Turning around and looking at nearly 100 people rushing towards her, Luo Yue frowned slightly, and at the same time reached out to take off the hairpin from her head and threw it to the ground. As the hairpin was firmly inserted into the ground, a huge square light curtain tens of meters long suddenly rose. Seeing the light curtain rising, Luo Yue breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she had set up a barrier near the secret realm in advance, otherwise she would really have been tricked to death by Ning Xin, a pig teammate. With Luo Yue's current cultivation level in the Four Extremes realm, the barrier set up by Luo Yue is enough to stop others for several seconds. A few seconds seemed short, but it was enough for Luo Yue to enter the secret realm and take away the inheritance first. As she stepped forward, a strong suction force suddenly came from the vortex at the entrance of the secret realm, swallowing Luo Yue's figure into it. With a trance in front of her eyes, a huge and gorgeous cave mansion appeared in Luo Yue's field of vision. The cave mansion is bronze in color as a whole, and its hemispherical shape looks quite weird. There are many irregular ravines crisscrossing it. At the same time, it seems that there is a long-lasting charm that has gone through vicissitudes of life and the changes of the sun and the moon. As for why Luo Yue recognized it as a cave mansion, it was because there were two very eye-catching characters engraved on the plaque at the door. Knowing the house. In her last life, when she followed a group of Kengyuan sword sect disciples to enter, most of the heavenly materials and earthly treasures there had been looted by the previous group of people who entered, leaving only some lower-level elixirs left. However, Luo Yue entered the Shifu again after gaining strength from the great accomplishment. Although there is still nothing gained, the internal structure of the Shifu is already well understood to her now. Luo Yue didn't stay outside Shifu, knowing that the barrier outside could no longer withstand it. She must make a quick decision now and leave after getting the deepest inheritance. The longer you delay, the more likely you are to make mistakes. If the battle between Zhangquan and the three people outside the secret realm ends, it is unclear whether he can leave with the inheritance. Walking into the interior of the Shifu, Luo Yue clearly felt that the concentration of spiritual energy around her began to increase exponentially. At the same time, as she breathed and breathed, her mental power also increased slightly. This feeling is very strange, as if someone has taken in the spiritual energy and spiritual power and fed it directly into your mouth. Luo Yue, who was a quasi-emperor in her previous life, still had very strong self-control. She quickly reacted and started to open the internal formation with the help of her memory, heading towards the depths of the consciousness palace. Compared to Luo Yue, the others who came later had no time to explore for a while. They sat cross-legged on the ground and competed to absorb the spiritual energy and spiritual power in the consciousness palace. This is definitely a rare opportunity for them. Especially for the growth of mental power, almost no one here has practiced techniques to strengthen the spirit. Those skills are almost only in the hands of the senior leaders of various families and sects. In addition, the cultivation of spiritual skills is extremely difficult. Today's monks basically focus on the realm of cultivation, and it is difficult to devote more time to cultivating spiritual power. Now when they encounter this kind of spiritual power that is directly fed into their mouths, everyone is like wolves and tigers, wishing that one person could just sit here forever. But it seemed that the secret realm had existed for too long. Everyone just absorbed it in place for less than half a quarter of an hour, and they clearly felt that the two kinds of energy in the air were getting thinner. Many people have realized this and started to absorb it harder and harder. The other side. After Luo Yue broke through the last ceiling formation, she had reached the deepest part of the consciousness mansion. The deepest space of the consciousness mansion was dark and damp, and the air was filled with a faint rancid smell, like cabbage that had been left to pickle in foul water for 300 years. Luo Yue wrinkled her nose and held her breath, then raised her eyes and looked forward. Directly opposite her, there is a bronze stone pillar standing on the ground. There is a series of obscure words carved on the stone pillars. Even she, who was a quasi-emperor in her previous life, could not decipher them all. Only the last 3 words she could barely make out. Knife-killing technique. Luo Yue slowly raised her head and saw a page of scripture with a halo floating on the top of the stone pillar. The surface of the scripture is dark, but it shines with a dazzling luster in the dark environment, which is really strange. What the hell is this? Even though Luo Yue went through all the memories of her previous life, she still had no impression of that dark page of scripture. After looking around, he determined that except for that page of scripture, there were no other clues about inheritance. Luo Yue took 3 steps and 2 steps at a time, then jumped into the air, stepped on the surface of the stone pillar with 1 foot, and at the same time used her strength to reach the top of the stone pillar. Her eyes only stayed on the surface of the dark book for a moment, and then she felt in a trance. Suppressing her mental discomfort, Luo Yue turned her head and looked elsewhere. At the same time, just in case, she tried her best to activate the Dao Yan Jing, trying to restore her body to its best condition. Under the operation of Dao Yan Jing, strands of Dao rhyme circulated around Luo Yue's body, and the uncomfortable feeling was quickly suppressed. Even under the influence of the Dao Yan Sutra, the halo on the dark page of the sutra became much dimmer. Luo Yue tried to take it away with the universe bag, but found no response. Just when Luo Yue was doubting, the dark scripture suddenly began to tremble violently, and a violent thrust penetrated into Luo Yue's sea of consciousness. Outside the secret realm, Zhang Chuan was still going back and forth with Ning Yuan, as if neither of them could do anything about the other. Every time Ning Yuan and Wang Lei used their killing moves to attack Zhang Chuan, the opponent was always able to avert the danger. On the other hand, although the power of Zhang Chuan's swordsmanship was intimidating, Ning Yuan and his 2 men were able to resist it every time. The 3 of them fought hard for nearly 100 rounds, 1 punch and 1 sword. Ning Yuan saw that continuing like this was not an option. As the main force, the 3 of them couldn't keep fighting here, right? At any rate, the inheritance in the secret realm still has to be fought for. Then he started to persuade. Zhang Chuan, how about we stop for now and explore the secret realm together first? As soon as Ning Yuan finished speaking, what responded to him was a dazzling huge sword light. Ning Yuan quickly retreated, narrowly avoiding the slashes of the sword light. At the same time, his eyes gradually turned cold as he looked at Zhang Chuan. He, who had always treated others calmly, now had anger clearly rising on his face. When had he, the dignified holy son of the Ning family, been so despised? They all say that the Zhang family are overbearing and domineering, but now it turns out that the rumors are true. Ning Yuan said angrily and laughed. Zhang Chuan heard this but said calmly, "So what, without my permission today, neither of you can even think of entering." After dealing with the 2 people opposite him for so long, he estimated that Luo Yue had almost obtained the inheritance. We can't let the 2 of them in at this time. Ning Yuan and Wang Lei narrowed their eyes at the same time. The implication behind Zhang Chuan's words was that he obviously didn't take them both seriously. Zhang Chuan, do you really think that if you stop us, your group of disciples will be able to obtain the inheritance of the secret realm? Based on the number of people alone, your Kengyuan sword sect is no match for our 2 families. Wang Lei sneered, looking like he was sure of victory. Zhang Chuan chuckled and shook his head, but to the surprise of the 2 of them, he did not refute. I saw him lowering his head and looking down. At the same time, the entrance to the secret realm happened to tremble at this moment, and a charming female figure was suddenly teleported out. After the dark scriptures entered Luo Yue's sea of consciousness, she did not feel any discomfort but felt comfortable all over. The dark scripture lay quietly in her sea of consciousness, as if she just wanted to find a warm bed and have a good sleep. Luo Yue's current idea is to quickly take the inheritance and leave the secret realm to find a place to hide. It won't be too late for her to come out after the others have finished searching the Shifu. But the development of things was beyond Luo Yue's expectations. She had just teleported out of the secret realm, but by chance she caught the eyes of Zhang Chuan and the others. Luo Yue's heart tightened, and at the same time her mind was running wildly, trying to find a reason to muddle through at the moment. Looking at Luo Yue, who was the first to come out of the secret realm, Ning Yuan and Wang Lei looked at each other, and a strange light flashed in their eyes. He walked out of the secret realm alone, with no one chasing him, and no trace of injury on his body. How does this look suspicious? Before the two of them could think any more, Luo Yue below had already moved. They saw her suddenly speeding up and rushing in the direction of Zhangchuan. The speed was so fast that Ning Yuan and the other two couldn't help but stare. "Stop leaving," Wang Lei shouted. At the same time, his body turned into lightning and came behind Luo Yue in an instant, grabbing the opponent's shoulder with one hand to capture him. Ning Yuan understood this and turned around to stop Zhang Chuan. But the next second he discovered that Zhang Chuan was nowhere to be seen opposite him at this moment. Just when Wang Lei's palm was about to touch Luo Yue's shoulder, Zhang Chuan's figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Wang Lei's eyes narrowed, and he immediately activated his spiritual energy, turned his palm into a fist, and punched Zhang Chuan in the chest. But the next second he froze on the spot, his eyes full of disbelief. Zhang Chuan was punched by Wang Lei without hesitation, and his whole body instantly vomited blood and flew backwards. Wang Lei stared at his fist blankly, thinking a lot for a while. When did my fist become so fast? Previously, Zhangchuan could still fight 1 against 2 without falling behind. Why can't he even block his own punch now? The other side. Luo Yue turned her head suddenly, and then she saw Zhang Chuan vomiting blood and flying upside down. Zhangchuan, her pupils couldn't help but tremble, and she shouted subconsciously. The reason why Luo Yue ran in the direction of Zhangchuan earlier was because she knew that Zhangchuan, a good senior brother, would do his best to protect her when there were outsiders. But she really didn't expect that the other party would use his body to help her block Wang Lei's punch. In less than a breath, Luo Yue came to Zhang Chuan's side and squatted down to help his upper body up. Unexpectedly, she was thrown away by Zhang Chuan, and the huge force almost made her unstable. Zhang Chuan glanced coldly and said in a cold voice, "Do you know that you are in the way?" As he spoke, he vomited out another mouthful of blood and his breath became weak. Hearing this, Luo Yue realized what she had just done. She actually wanted to help the man she wished she could kill with 1,000 swords in this life. I should give him a stabbing blow. Are you starting to play the role of a good senior brother who cares about your junior brothers and sisters again? Seeing the determined expression on Zhang Chuan's face, Luo Yue couldn't help but sneer in her heart. "Get out," Zhang Chuan shouted in a low voice. After hearing this, Luo Yue used her spiritual energy to turn into water droplets and cling to her eyes. She lowered her head and pretended to be a wronged little girl. "Zhang, senior brother Zhang, don't make me say it a second time," Zhang Chuan said coldly again. Looking at Luo Yue's pitiful appearance, Zhang Chuan was speechless in his heart. If the other party continues to act like this, he will vomit all the blood packs he prepared temporarily. We can't let him vomit real blood on the spot. Luo Yue wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, as if she had been fighting in her heart for a long time before she made up her mind and turned around to leave with red eyes. "You asked me to leave." Luo Yue sneered in her heart, "I wish I could leave earlier." Watching Luo Yue's figure disappear from sight, Zhang Chuan finally breathed a sigh of relief. It can be regarded as sending this ant away. So next, Zhang Chuan reached out and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, then raised his eyes to look at Wang Lei and Ning Yuan. At this time, Wang Lei did not chase Luo Yue who left. Looking at Zhang Chuan who was beaten to the point of vomiting blood, the corner of his mouth curled up. I saw him walking forward slowly, clapping his hands and saying with a smile, "What a deep love between brothers and sisters. But Zhangquan, you are no match for us now. As for your junior sister, she left alone. Do you think she can get out of the safe zone?" Zhang Chuan didn't seem to hear the other party's sarcastic words. Instead, he slowly took out a handkerchief in front of the two of them and began to wipe the blood-stained palms and corners of his mouth. The more Zhang Chuan behaved calmly, the more unhappy the two people opposite him became. "What the hell is going on, and you still want to show off in front of them?" Looking down at the charred clothes that were broken by Wang Lei's punch, Zhang Chuan shook his head and sighed. "It's time to wrap up the warm-up. Wang Lei, Ning Yuan. What does this mean? I just played hundreds of rounds and you said it was a warm-up." Then Wang Lei and Ning Yuan looked at each other and shook their heads and smiled. They felt that Zhang Chuan must have been beaten stupid just now. "Brother Wang, I'll have to trouble you to give our young master Zhang a try later." Ning Yuan chuckled. But a few seconds after he finished speaking, there was still no movement from Wang Lei's side. "Brother Wang." As he spoke, Ning Yuan turned his head and looked aside, and found that Wang Lei beside him had already disappeared. Instead, there was Zhang Chuan's teasing smile. Boom. The next second, a violent roar exploded beside Zhang Chuan and Ning Yuan. I saw Wang Lei flying upside down at some point, and his body was heavily embedded in the rock wall. A gloomy smile suddenly appeared at the corner of Zhang Chuan's mouth. He stretched out a finger and pointed at Wang Lei, who was unconscious not far away. "Are you looking for him?" Looking at the smile on Zhang Chuan's face, Ning Yuan couldn't help but shuddered and felt creepy. Ning Yuan subconsciously took a step back. How is it possible? "Zhangquan, what state are you in?" At this moment, Zhang Chuan was completely different from before. Even though he had no aura about him, Ning Yuan couldn't help but panic because of his calm and self-confident feeling. Wang Lei from the 5th layer of the Transformation Dragon realm was knocked unconscious without the ability to fight back. So if it were you, you probably wouldn't be able to block even 1.5 moves, right? Patting Ning Yuan on the shoulder, Zhang Chuan said calmly, "Don't be nervous, brother Ning, your family and I have always been on good terms, how could I be so harsh on you?" Hearing this, Ning Yuan secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It turns out that the other party still remembers that their two families have a good relationship. Then Zhangquan changed the topic again. "But, I said before, Kang Yuan's sword sect wants this secret realm. Hurry up and leave with the Ning family in a moment. Oh, by the way, invite the Wang family to go with you." As soon as these words came out, Ning Yuan's expression suddenly changed. "Zhang Chuan, do you have to do it so brilliantly?" Now he and Wang Lei have become each other's stepping stones. As a result, the other party wanted them to evacuate the people they brought, without even giving them soup. Seeing Ning Yuan gritting his teeth, Zhang Chuan said calmly, "You can also refuse, but when you Ning family members come out, they will see a stripped-down holy sun." Ning Yuan's expression suddenly fell, and he took half a step back unconsciously. He didn't expect Zhang Chuan to play so hard. After thinking for a long time, Ning Yuan sighed, nodded helplessly, and turned towards the entrance of the secret realm. After a while, Zhangquan saw Ning Yuan walking out of the secret realm with disciples from the Ning and Wang families. At this time, the faces of the disciples from both families showed reluctance. They had just finished absorbing the energy in the Consciousness Mansion Hall and were about to explore inside, when they were brought out by Ning Yuan. If this kind of thing happened, anyone would be so angry that they would curse. The Wang family members wanted to resist at that time, but were suppressed by Ning Yuan's momentum and instantly became mute, and all of them followed him obediently. As soon as they walked out of the secret realm, they saw their holy sun imprinted unconscious in the stone wall. Holy sun, how could the holy sun? Is Zhang Chuan really that strong? Everyone in the Wang family suddenly panicked and hurriedly ran forward, and they worked together to lift Wang Lei up. Now the secret realm has not been explored, and the holy sun has been beaten unconscious. After returning home, they will definitely be punished by their elders. The people of the Ning family naturally saw Wang Lei's miserable situation clearly. The eyes of many Ning family members wandered between Ning Yuan and Wang Lei. Now Wang Lei was injured and unconscious, but their holy son was unscathed. After such a comparison, it is obvious that their holy son is better. Feeling the gazes of the disciples around him, Ning Yuan twitched the corners of his mouth and turned his head to the side. Watching Ning and Wang leave, Zhang Chuan saw that there was no one around, so he found a stone half a man's height and sat on it. Before the people of Kengyuan sword sect came out of the secret realm, Zhang Chuan decided to check today's results first. System, open the heartbeat index panel of the contract partner. Ding! The system's mechanical sound sounded in Zhang Chuan's mind. Then a light curtain that only Zhang Chuan could see appeared in front of him. Contract partner Luo Yue's heartbeat index, -80. Seeing that the original -100 turned into -80, Zhang Chuan nodded with satisfaction. Although the current data is still negative, it has increased at least. It was worthy of his hard performance just now. After waiting in place for half an hour, everyone from the Kengyuan sword sect walked out of the secret realm together. Every disciple had a smile on his face, almost as if he could write the words, "I am rich," on his face. In less than a moment, Luo Yue, who had left earlier, rushed back from a short distance away and stood silently at the end of the team. Her beautiful eyes lingered on Zhang Chuan, and there was a strange light flashing in her eyes from time to time. After she left, she placed several small formations along the path just in case, before returning to investigate the situation. But it seems that it is no longer needed now. Zhang Chuan didn't know what method he used to actually make Ning and Wang families evacuate. Everyone looked at Zhang Chuan's charred and broken clothes and the blood that had not yet dried at the corners of his mouth, and couldn't help but lower their heads. Senior brother Zhang, he looks very seriously injured. Senior brother Zhang stopped Wang Lei and Ning Yuan just for us. He could obviously enter the secret realm with us. Senior brother Zhang is so great. I will definitely follow senior brother Yang's lead in the future. Several disciples even gave him the elixir obtained from the secret realm, hoping to help Zhang Chuan recover from his injuries. However, he was rejected by Zhang Chuan. In terms of recovery elixirs, he had almost too many to eat. Even though the opponent's elixir was more effective, he was not seriously injured at all. Wang Lei's previous punch only scratched the skin on his chest, but with his physique, it healed in less than half a second. If you really want to give him a gift, it's better to leave everything in Luo Yue's hands. Zhang Chuan's rejection of the elixir made all his disciples respect him even more. With such a senior brother, what more can I ask for? Kengyuan sword sect has senior brother Zhang Chuan here, will they still worry about lack of unity among the disciples? In the crowd, Ning Xin stood on tiptoes and looked around. When she found Luo Yue standing at the back, her eyes lit up and she trotted to Luo Yue's side and said curiously, "Yue, what kind of barrier did you set up outside the secret realm earlier? It was able to stop so many of us." As she said that, Ning Xin wrapped her hands around Luo Yue's waist, and put her face against her chest, rubbing her face in an intimate manner. Luo Yue's pretty face couldn't help but blush. "Exener, get up first. The barrier you are talking about is an ancient formation that I accidentally obtained when I was traveling abroad. If you are interested, I can teach you after returning to the sect." Luo Yue also has a very fond impression of Ning Xin. The two of them were very good friends in the previous life. Although she was not very resistant to Ning Xin's intimate behavior, she would be more or less embarrassed when there were so many people around. "Okay, I haven't learned the formation yet." As she spoke, Ning Xin's hands hugged Luo Yue's waist tighter. When the male disciples around him saw this scene, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva, with envy flashing in their eyes from time to time. Although Luo Yue was the first person to enter the secret realm, no one doubted that the other party had obtained the best inheritance. After all, they had plundered almost all the treasures in the Shifu, and they didn't see Luo Yue's shadow during the whole process. Coupled with the dense array of formations in the Shifu, one would fall into it accidentally, and it took a lot of time for many of them to work together. It is conceivable that Luo Yue must be trapped in a trap somewhere and unable to appear. Otherwise, when there are so many treasures of heaven and earth in Jifu, how could the other party resist and not compete for them? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.